Uh, we are back here once again. I feel like those are words that I've said each time on this thing. I'm not sure. We are here once again, because I mean
I
that's what it
guess it's
is.
now we have to.
Yeah,
You
no,
have to say it
I
for the
guess.
rest of every recording.
Yeah, another month's gone by. We've seen the movies, we've seen the shows, we've played the games, the music,
Mm,
the what have you. And we're here to report our findings of all these pods, Peter. On this podcast, we're
indeed,
reporting our
indeed.
pods we discovered.
Our pods, whatever we discovered.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, and starting us off with movies, I have not watched as much this month. I will just say that, but I still have ones that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know
you
how many
you
you
quit
have
your
this.
last year. You were doing a movie a day thing, which is what I've been
Exactly.
doing for years, and you just wanted to
Yes.
do that for 2024, and
I
since
did it
you've
to try
retired
it
it.
out.
Hmm.
I have. It was a fun experience, but I don't like sometimes life gets in the way and you can't watch a movie a day and getting the pressure to try and get that one in made it not as enjoyable sometimes last year. So
Yeah,
this year I'm just, taking it easy.
for a couple
Still
busy days.
watching,
Yeah.
yeah, still watching some movies, but just not as regularly
Yeah, I
as
feel
last year.
like movies like a couple days a week or something like that. At least like one or two is like a
Yeah,
pretty doable, pretty normal thing. A movie a day is like,
that's
what the hell is this shit?
yeah,
That's
who
sort of what it
does
feels
that?
like.
Who would ever do that?
I don't know. That's
Would you like to start us off then,
Oh yeah, I
discussing what
can.
you
In
found?
in tradition, I can
Mm-hmm.
start us off. I saw this one documentary of my favorite band, Beatles 64. It came out this year or last year. It came out like it might have come out like a month ago or some shit. I guess I
Okay.
should have pulled this up. Oops. Um, Beatles 64 from last year. It's directed by this dude David Tedeschi. I don't know what the fuck he's been doing or he's been with. It is produced by Martin Scorsese, and he's done a handful of like old rock group documentary things with Bob Dylan. He's done like two or three of those,
Mm-hmm.
and he also has at least one thing on the Stones. And he also appears in this. And this Beatles 64 one is just so like it's very unorganized, is how I describe it, because it's like the the whole thing is built upon like this restored footage of the quartet when they were traveling around in 1964 for these a couple of tours in America, and so it's like it's advertised as like unfound or like never seen before footage or whatever of it's
Sure.
really just the dudes goofing around in like hotels, like recording each other, or like on the train, and they're like I don't know, they're just like geeking out on like the technology of I could listen to myself right now as it's being recorded because that just what like wasn't a thing at
Okay.
the
That's
time.
kind of fun.
Yeah, for just like a camera and then like a microphone setup and like them just goofing around really. And that's like all the new stuff, which I'm cool with. And then it's like it feels like they tried to build some sort of like not even a narrative, just like fill out the rest of the time. Like this needs to be at least an hour and a half thing, or people
Okay.
aren't gonna like treat it seriously or something. So it's like the mix of the like new footage that's like restored through what's his name who did the restoration shits, Peter Jackson,
Peter Jackson.
like his team of people who are like taking these old pieces of footage and fixing the audio and video to make it look nicer and sound cleaner. So they do that for these old things, and they're mixing that in with like interviews with people who were there from like who like saw the Beatles live during that time, and then it cuts to footage from the actual year or like years in the 1960s of like interviewing people about the Beatles in the streets, and then it's kind of between that back to like other interviews of just random people talking about the Beatles music and how influential they are or something, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's cutting between that and these like they get Paul and Ringo to do like a couple things, and it's just like the Paul tells like the same story again, where it's like I was with John and we were doing the whatever song, and my dad was like, "Why isn't it she? Yeah, whatever the fuck the lyrics are." And it's like I've heard that story like five times. He said that, and he just says it again here, and then Ringo just gives like I don't even know, just like whatever type of thing.
They
again.
just flew him out and had
Yeah,
them,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
film
And
stuff.
then they used like other random archival interviews from them, which is just from like the anthology series, which I would like to check out. Um, but it's just this weird like hodgepodge of sort of a mess. And in all honesty, like I'm cool with because it also tries to weave in like the footage from their performances, which honestly I would just like give me all of the updated because
Hmm.
I've seen most of these concerts of them like live on YouTube um, from back in the day, and they're like really shitty quality. You know, like the video and audio, and like sometimes for certain songs, like the audio just doesn't work, or the camera, like the video doesn't work, and you just have audio only. Sometimes you have video only, type of stuff. So if they could do like some sort of restoration for just all of those, I will gladly just take those and watch all of them because I've watched like so many random, concerts or performances or like interviews from the time about them on YouTube, and I would super just take that over than like whatever
Whatever
this
this
thing
was,
was.
yeah.
It does have one like noteworthy interview person who was like very timely because it was David Lynch they got to like speak very briefly and
Hmm.
within the
Interesting.
past like month of since the last podcast is the first time we're recording
His
since his
passing, yeah.
death. It happened a few weeks ago, which is it really bummed me out, man. Like that.
It's a sad
As
one.
far as like
No, yeah.
Hollywood people go, like there's not a whole lot I'll be like, damn,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. No, he's a special voice in Hollywood, and his vision is not one that we've seen replicated truly.
very
He's one
unique.
of one, and it's pretty sad that we'll never see another one of his projects. But I
Yeah,
am excited to see the next wave of filmmakers that have obviously grown up loving him
yeah, totally.
and would love to emulate him.
Because we saw
Obviously,
that we
yeah,
talked
Jane
about that
Schoenberg, yeah,
the what the
Sean
fuck I
Bunn,
saw the
yeah.
TV Glow and
Yeah.
it sort of feels at least a little bit inspired by
Yeah,
David
they
Lynch stuff.
understand the what kind of made his movies
Yeah,
tick, and I'm glad that there are some people that they have that understanding of his work. But it is sad that he's no longer with us.
yeah, totally. And he felt very genuine. And
Hmm.
he was just like a funny dude, like a funny, weird,
He
wacky,
was.
interesting man. And that's sort of what is displayed of him in Beetle 64, where he it appears for just like a minute or so, and he
Hmm.
explains how like he went to one of the concerts live of the Beatles when he was younger, and he like didn't know what he was getting himself into. Like he was just going with like his brother or like a group of friends or something. He didn't like even know what or who they were. He was just kind of like, yeah, I'll go to this thing, which is interesting.
Classic. Yep,
It's
yep.
totally it's super him though. And then like he tried to. It was so interesting and funny because he was like just trying to describe in like the most general sense of like what music even is. He was just trying to like define it in like his
Yeah.
own weird, unique way. So that was quite nice. I would have just taken that the interview with David Lynch for a minute and a half or whatever, and then
And then
all the
some of the
restored
restored
footage,
footage.
and then everything else is like yeah, it's just
Take
like
it or leave
eh.
it. Hmm.
I would recommend it to people who if people really like the Beatles and they just want something a little bit extra, I guess check it out. But like other than that, yeah, not
Not
so
too
great.
important.
It's okay though.
All right. I started off my year watching one of the more, you know, talked about movies now in the Oscar awards circuit,
Mm.
and that movie is Conclave, the new film from Edward Berger, dealing with, you know, the unexpected death of the Pope and
Oh
the
yeah.
ongoing, I guess they call it a conclave in order for
The Roman
all of the
conclave.
cardinals to, yeah, vote in their next pope. And it's a good movie. I think it's incredibly well made. Like the filmmaking is top notch. All of the cinematography, the pacing, and the writing is all very good. And as that's not to mention the acting, which is also top notch. A ton of just fantastic actors. I think Ray Fiennes at this point has got to be one of my favorite actors of all time. I
Ralph.
just love
Yeah.
everything he's in. It's actually pronounced Rafe.
Is it?
Because he's from
He's
Ireland,
Irish, and
Welsh,
that's how they'd
something.
say it
Yeah,
there. No
yeah,
way,
yeah,
it's Ray?
yeah. UK. It's weird.
Oh
Rafe.
my
It's
god.
not. It's not even Ray. It's Rafe. It's pretty
Rafe.
sick. Yeah.
Then
Um,
spell it like
but
that.
why don't they do that for
Yeah.
me?
They use like the same
Uh,
English letters, but they just say pronounce them differently or something. It's
yep, because
confusing.
they got to be special.
Yeah,
But
whatever.
man, I love
Great.
everything he's in.
All right.
Obviously,
He's great.
the
Yeah.
Grand Budapest is my favorite from him, and he makes that movie. It's my favorite movie. So I just love him. He does so well. Stanley Tucci is also excellent in this, as well as most of the other actors. Um, there's just a sense of this movie playing it safe at the end, and it's hard to describe, but there are movies that are categorized as Oscar bait. They come out every year, and there's something about them that maybe plays to the lowest common denominator, makes safe plays, and is just overall kind of overwrought with sentimentality
Hmm.
and kind of optimism, because that's what makes for
Yeah.
movies that kind of attract the Academy's vote.
They have a
And
formula
they're
to them.
often, yeah, yeah. I would say I would put Green Book up there, and
Yeah.
obviously that movie won Best
I
Picture. I put like movies like
haven't
Ford v
seen Coda, but
Ferrari,
probably that one.
Maestro, Coda, yeah, and other movies of that vein. And I think I would categorize this movie as Oscar bait, but I think it's done really well
Hmm.
in every other aspect of it, that it kind of strains up against those conventions, which I appreciated. I still think I would have liked this movie a ton more if more of like the optimistic and naive elements were kind of left in the dust. It seems very hopeful towards the end, which I understand and I like. But in order
Hmm.
to get that optimism, it kind of lowers its nuance, and the more cynical analysis of, the Catholic Church and politics and all that power and whatever, faith, and but it just loses a bit of the sauce at the end, which I would have appreciated if it didn't. Overall, though, I think it is a very strong movie.
Hmm.
Just kind of left me wanting more.
Yeah. Okay. This Edward Berger, he also did the All Quiet on the Western Front remake. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that was obviously one of his breakout roles or breakout directing gigs, but he's
Yeah.
kind of known for doing a lot of interesting television
Okay.
directing. I know he's done a lot of high prestige kind of shows. I know there was the one about the I've seen a lot of the shows talked about on YouTube in video essays
Sure.
dealing with like, oh, these shows are excellent.
Hmm.
Like the one where there's the ship that goes to like the Arctic but gets frozen and they're trapped, and so it's like a historical retelling of some kind of shipwreck. But
I have no idea.
uh, I think he's a talented guy.
Hmm.
All Quiet on the Western Front was also, it was a good movie. Wasn't my favorite war movie by a long stretch, but I think it was well made. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I still have yet to see that and the original.
hmm
Right. Um, yeah, for my next one, we've talked about musicals before. I think I can't remember if it was the last episode or the one before that where you watched like three of them or whatever.
I think it was two episodes,
Yeah,
or maybe no, it might have been the
I don't
last
know.
one
It's
with
hard to keep track.
Joker and yeah, all
It's
of
easy to
the
keep track for like the
fantastic
first
ones.
three, but now like we're on the sixth or
Yeah,
seventh one.
exactly.
It's like I don't know what number it is. But yeah, we talked about it before. Neither of us have that theater kid background sort of thing.
No,
We both
certainly not.
dabble slightly in the musical sort of sphere. Um,
Hmm
and I've liked some of them. I've come out enjoying some of them. This one that I saw somewhat recently, which you've seen also. I don't know how long ago you've seen it though. That being Mamma Mia, which is
Yes.
it's a adaptation, film adaptation of I don't know, I guess also a Broadway play thing, I assume, and it's existed for however many billion of years.
hmm
This one came out in 2008, and it's like I came so close to buying into it and being like, yes, this is cool, and I love this, because it's either like yeah, this is the greatest thing ever, or it's like, oh, okay, what, I mean, whatever, man, type of thing. One of the top letterbox reviews talks about how like, oh, they're all drunk on set, and that makes it like awesome. And I think I read that in advance or like while watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it did like, if that is true, it does make certain scenes make more sense, just like the
I did not
deliveries
know that.
of
But
certain
yeah,
things.
I like.
If that is a
I agree.
fact, it's just some random letterbox dude saying it. Supposedly
Hmm.
that could be true. Um, but like, if that is true, also, then it sort of, to me, justifies like how the actors are able to like just say or communicate the things that they're saying, because it's like the only way you could say that is if you're drunk off your mind. Like no sober person would. It'd be hard. It'd be much harder to pull it off, type of thing. I wouldn't call it cringe, but it's like it's a certain type of corn that
Hmm.
goes on in this film. I like the premise of it a lot, and I do
It is a
like
funny one.
a good
Yeah.
number of the songs and the musical uh, scenes that
Yeah,
accompany
it's
them.
classic ABBA,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's nice that
and it's
it's like
nice.
it's
Yeah,
different than most musicals where they'll do their own like unique song tracks or whatever.
yeah.
But
And as far as like,
Mamma Mia gets to be pop music,
yeah, I
which is
mean, I
pretty
guess
cool.
it would be considered jukebox musical. Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah,
this is? Okay.
80s synth
I don't want to
pop,
just
like
say a
Euro
term and
pop.
throw it out and pretend like I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay.
No,
Because
that isn't accurate description.
that's pretty. That is what this one is. And out of the ones that I've seen, this is probably one of the better ones. I've also seen Moulin Rouge, and that film
Okay.
adaptation is really weird. I forget the director, but he's a very he is an individual who makes
Hmm.
art that I don't always like, but that one was interesting.
Is that Star Trooper and
No,
Showgirls,
no, no, no,
or
no.
was that Chicago?
Way different
Oh,
from
okay.
Starship Troopers. I forget his name off the top of
What
my
am I
head, but he's
thinking
done
of?
like other
Yeah, yeah,
musical
yeah.
shits.
Yes.
He did Australia. That's the only other one I could think of for some reason,
Australia. Okay.
which I haven't seen. And there's Australia, and then there's some other sequel to it that's also like 2.5 billion hours. I forget his name. Are you pulling him up?
Baz Luhrmann. Yes, yes,
But
yes.
yeah. Did he do the Babylon? Was that him?
No, that was Damien Chazelle.
They give off similar vibes, I feel like.
I can see the similarities.
Buzz
That's
Lu-
actually,
Wait, let me
yeah,
look up
surprised
Buzz
that they
Luhrmann.
have not
Shit,
really
that
been
is.
compared.
What am
But
How do you even
he did
spell?
Romeo and Juliet, Elvis, Great Gatsby.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, he's pretty well known.
Yeah. Anyways, Mamma
Very,
Mia, it's
very
okay.
stylistic.
I don't know if you have anything to say about it. When did you watch it? Probably like years
I
ago.
watched it years and years ago.
Yeah.
It's like in that era with like Parent Trap and like
Yeah. This one's 2008.
peak Pierce Brosnan. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's very much like something you should throw on with the family.
It's a
Like,
classic. Yeah. Watch it
I feel
with
like
people. Don't
everyone's
watch it
moms
alone
love
in my
it.
bed
Yeah,
like I did or whatever.
yeah,
I think is what I did.
because
But
it's a fun one.
Mhm.
It's got a lot of energy to it. It is
Yeah,
silly
totally.
and campy, obviously. I kind of want to re-watch it.
Yeah.
Just see if my opinion, because I think I have it like as a 5 on
Yeah. Well, that's what I
Letterboxd.
put it as because
Yeah,
that was just how
yeah.
it was for me.
It's like yeah. I'll have to see if it has changed
Yeah.
any of my opinions
There
as
was
I've
there was
now watched much more. But
yeah. There was a sequel for it that came out a couple of
yep,
years ago when I was working at the
yeah,
movie theater. It was like airing at that time, so I like caught a couple glimpses of that as I was doing random things in there. But which I
yeah.
guess I'll check that out at some point. Cause why not? I love film
I
sequels.
I love
I will
film
watch all of
sequels so
them.
much. You have to. It's just otherwise
That's
you
how they
are
get
not a
you.
true movie enjoyer.
Oh
Yeah,
damn.
otherwise you can't claim to be because you haven't seen them all, every single movie.
Oh god, like Pokemon,
Um,
except it's corporate
in,
like capitalism,
indeed. Yep,
which
yep.
you could argue is Pokemon of the now, just capitalism.
They Nintendo is certainly pushing towards
Pokemon,
that.
it's Pokemon Company, Peter. They
It's
developed
Pokemon
that shit.
Company,
They
you're right.
work with
Yeah,
Nintendo.
but sure. But hey, they're both getting a paycheck.
I know, yeah. That's all I got to say about Mamma Mia, though. It's okay. Some people like it.
On my end, I decided to check out a couple of films from an upcoming director that I was interested in. And for the one I want to talk about now is his debut, or not even his debut, but his first like kind of mainstream film. And this is Vox Lux from Brady Corbett,
Oh, okay.
who just came out with The Brutalist this year, which
Hmm.
I will talk about soon. But obviously, that movie has been getting a bunch of buzz in the Oscar award circuit, and it's been one that I saw the trailer a while ago, and it kind of looked like something I'd be into. So I wanted to check out his kind of filmography because it was interesting. I checked out The Brutalist, obviously on Letterboxd, and then I check out the director, and I realized, oh, he doesn't have a ton.
Hmm.
He has Vox Lux and one other, but I see that was initially an actor, and an actor in what is a list of a ton of like incredible movies that are like highly lauded from like the most auteur directors
Oh, yeah.
in the business. And so I was very intrigued by this man's story. And so I decided to kind of check out Vox Lux, one of his earlier films, before checking out The Brutalist, because I really wanted to see that in theaters. And what do I have to say about Vox Lux? It's a strange movie, very, very strange. It's incredibly ambitious. The opening kind of is a bit of like a prologue, in a sense, is like terrifying and incredibly unsettling. I don't want to spoil anything because I
Hmm.
did not know much about this movie going into it, and I think that served me because it is a very bleak and yeah, terrifying opening. Just in a sense that I haven't really watched a film doing something quite so. I guess I don't know. It's voyeuristic, but also almost traumatic, and that's a lot. It feeds a lot into the themes of the movie about you know the culture of trauma, how we deal with it as a society, celebrity, capitalism, exploitation, all of those kind of things, which are all ambitious themes to try and tackle, and in one movie that has an equally ambitious sort of structure where you have prologues and act one, act two,
Hmm.
with a time skip in between, dealing with the early life of almost the birth of a star, a celebrity. And then in the second act, you get them dealing with obviously all the things that come with celebrity and, you know, the benefits and the consequences of both. It's a I think it's a bit overly ambitious at points. I think it tries to handle a ton, and maybe not so successfully. However, the quandaries and the questions and the you know analysis that this film raises is really compelling, I think, and I think worth exploring. It's a movie that is a strange watch. I was really torn between like a 6 and a 7 because I wasn't
Hmm.
sure how much I thought the intentions and the ambitions of the movie stacked up against the actual movie that you get, right? So there's a lot in the subtext and the writing that you are left to think about, but I think overall the movie is messy. But I think I appreciated the things that it was going for more so than I was put off by some of the decisions that were made in order to make this like very, very ambitious movie. But I think it's worth a watch. It's a very unique movie, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, this one's been on my watch list for I don't know how long, maybe a couple years. I don't remember how it got in there, but yeah, I do want to check out this and also the Brutalist, which he did
Hmm.
more recently. So
Yeah.
yeah, going back to me, I saw this other film from 1984, that being Body Double, which was directed by Brian De Palma, who's a pretty good
Hmm.
director. I think. I guess he's most known for Scarface, Carrie, and the he did the first Mission Impossible, I believe,
Yep. Hmm.
which is interesting. Um, and yeah, this one, Body Double, is really strange, and like depending on how you approach this, it could just be like weird, unnecessarily horny and trashy schlock, or it could be
Hmm.
like really interesting, cool, and insightful. And I ended up feeling the second thing of that, because I was sort of aware going into like Brian De Palma as a filmmaker, like who he sort of is, and he's like with Blowout, which is another movie by him that I really like. He's sort of like taking Hollywood and sort of people in his like universe of people, and he's trying to sort of like what the fuck's the word? I always forget it. When you are talking badly about something, but in a respectful and professional way, criticizing. I don't know why I can't remember that word. That's weird. That's weird. But yeah, he's sort of like criticizing the Hollywood in general, and especially like the sort of high society type of stuff, which I feel like generally for films, when they are talking about high society, they are usually critiquing it and saying, here's what it sort of maybe looks like the early on in the film, it's usually about like, here's how maybe it might look cool, and then the rest of the film is breaking it down and saying like, here's what's not cool about this aspect of people's lives or whatever. I saw another film, The Great Beauty, somewhat recently. That one's Italian. I forget the director, dude, but he's a good one also. And that movie is super like, we are just taking this individual in this high society and we are just breaking his whole shit down type of thing. And that one's very nice also. But for Body Double, it's sort of a weird thing. It's in America. It's this sort of failing, struggling actor dude. And he has this friend who lets him stay at this other person's apartment to like water plants or whatever and just look after it. And he introduces him to this like little telescope thing where he could view this mostly naked woman across like the whatever Hollywood Hills place. Just do like this weird like overly sexual
rear window
thing.
type shit.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, totally. And it feels weird, like from that get-go, but it's this sort of breakdown of this, I guess, culture that they have in those areas. And I think it's pretty cool. Again, depending on how you look at it, it's a little bit weird and out there, but there are a lot of scenes that I think are pretty well directed, and I like the ending a lot, so I would recommend this one, most definitely. And I guess also The Great Beauty, which I saw recently, that one's also pretty cool. That one probably appeals to more people in the modern day because it's like, it's foreign cinema. It's so, I don't know. There's something about it, I guess. But both of them are very good.
Brian De Palma is a director that I've wanted to kind of go on a deep dive in because I've watched Scarface and Mission Impossible, and they're both great movies. And he's widely lauded as one of the better American film directors. So I've been meaning to get into his whole filmography, so I'll probably check out Body Double at some point.
Yeah. I would say probably watch Blowout first. Okay. It tackles sort of similar themes. I think it was made first. And this just sort of feels like an expansion of like the ideas he wanted to explore with that, in terms of just like the critique of these lifestyles and shit. Both of them are really good though.
Cool. On my end, I continued watching Brady Corbett, and I checked out The Brutalist, which I was very excited to catch in theaters on 70 millimeter.
Damn.
Which I'm not. I did enjoy the experience.
Did you notice a difference? Like, what's the difference? Dude?
It's just bigger, like straight up.
Oh, okay.
And this is a really intriguing movie. There's been a ton of discourse surrounding it for many like avenues of discourse regarding this movie, because first of all, it's very celebrated and critically lauded. People are putting it up. It's been nominated for Best Picture and a bunch of other awards. Everything that has been said about it being good is accurate. I think it's it feels corny, but the whole kind of marketing around this movie is like all the reviews are like saying monumental, big, extravagant, and I have to agree. It is like when you leave the theater, you are just like, this is a big movie. It's just like dealing with a ton, and the scale of the storytelling is ambitious, just like Vox Lux was.
It's also very long.
Um,
It's like
it's
over
very
three
long.
hours.
Yeah, 3.5 or something like that. Yeah, with a interestingly placed 15-minute interlude or kind of
Intermission.
intermission in the very center, splitting up Act One and Act Two, which was nice. Like in a crowded theater, everyone's just kind of gets up and is talking. It's very
Right.
reminiscent of a theater piece, where you just kind of get 15 minutes to walk around, go to the bathroom, talk to other people, and kind
Yeah,
of
exactly.
discuss the movie that you're watching, which was a fun experience. But this movie it's heavy, it's strong. Like you can tell that the director has a clear vision and a story that he's trying to kind of wrestle with and shape. It's a story that you've seen before. Immigrant come to America, and the desire for the American dream and the ongoing disillusionment with the system. But it's done in a very unique and individualistic way. I think it's maybe ambitious to a fault. I don't think this is a perfect movie. And it's really interesting the things that it says about, the themes that it's wrestling with artistry versus patronship, capitalism, all the faults of the American dream, and the actual dream that it is kind of searching for. What is the soul of the artist? It's dealing with a ton of heady themes and really overwrought metaphors, but it does so in an incredibly watchable way. Like it doesn't feel like a super long movie. The pace is great. The acting is all fantastic. Soundtrack is excellent. Cinematography, great. It's the design of the movie. It all serves this wider purpose of dealing with architecture, design, and creativity. You know, I don't know what else there is to say about this movie. I think you should definitely watch it. It's it's hard to recommend it because it is like 3.5 hours.
Sure.
But
That's not a problem for me, but yeah, for other for
yeah,
the
I
normies out
think
there.
indeed
For some people,
the
yeah.
it's
Which is
just really
understandable.
interesting how many things this movie tries to tackle and how successful it is for the most part at dealing with the various things that it tries to engage with. Yeah, I was happy that this movie came out and was celebrated as much as it was, because I am a big fan of architecture through my dad's side and have a large
Oh yeah.
appreciation for kind of cool buildings and architecture and design. And so I like the brutalist movement and style of architecture that kind of came from, you know, was depicted in this movie in such a cool way.
hmm Yeah, it's nice, man. Yeah, I want to see that at some point. I'll probably watch it at some point soon, within the next maybe couple months or so. Who knows?
hmm
Um,
It's a long one, but it's incredibly watchable, which is it's an endeavor to get that done in 3.5 hours.
hmm
The whole discourse surrounding the movie about, it was filmed for like under 10 million. It was, not wanted to be distributed for a long time just because of how, particular this movie is and like the audience that it's there for. But I think it's a success story, and I'm very interested to see where Brady Corbet goes and kind of what else he has in store for Hollywood.
hmm Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Um, for me, I have this pet peeve with films where I really despise one trick ponies.
hmm
So we talked for Fast and Furious. We talked about The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and how
Mm-hmm.
they play the same characters in every goddamn movie. Like it doesn't matter what the film's about. It's just here's the
A certain
same
lack of
person that they
range.
play,
Yeah.
yeah, in every single thing. When, like, I know that both of them, like for those two examples, I know they're capable of doing slightly other things because before they
Mm-hmm.
were like shunted into, okay, this is what we're gonna be doing always from whatever year onward. Like before that point, they've done slightly other various things. But now it's just the same, and like that's who it is for actors. They exist for directors also, where you have this dude Roland Emmerich is a good example where he just does like disaster movies over and over again, and they all have like the same goddamn character archetypes and character dynamics. He's just like reusing shit, and like every time he reuses them, they get worse and worse somehow. Like it's nuts how shitty some of those movies are. And so yeah, but but as far as anime movies go, there's no better one trick pony than this dude Makoto Shinkai, who you might know from he did Your Name and
Yeah.
Suzume, which was somewhat more recent. And then the one I saw somewhat recently was Weathering with You, which is just this. He's known for like I don't know what. There's every movie of his has got to be a straight romance.
Star-crossed lovers
Yeah,
that
essentially.
can't be
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
There's
That's the
two
that
young
is the
people,
thing.
a dude and a
Yep.
girl, and the film is mostly about the romance between them. In addition to there's some sort of weird supernatural phenomena occurring, and they like something about it goes down where one or both of them are able to stop the bad thing from occurring in some way. And the one of them essentially it seems like they sacrifice themselves, and then there's a time skip, and then the miraculously meet up again. That's how it has been in all three of these fucking movies, Peter. Your Name, Suzume, and Weathering with You. That's the exact
Mm-hmm.
same fucking shit. It's just you slightly change the what and hows of what's like sort of happening, but like the overarching like what is this? It's this romance where these 4 points of things must happen again and again. So yeah, that's annoying. I think also his one of the producers that works on his films got outed for being a PDF file somewhat recently.
Yeah.
It was something like absolutely absurd though. He raped over 100
What?
female minors. Yeah, I think so, like over 100,
Holy shit.
which is
Jesus.
like
No, that is absurd.
insanely evil numbers.
What?
And I think he only got like 6 years or something, or is going to, which doesn't make any
Oh my
sense.
God, what the fuck?
Japan is just an interesting place.
That's one way to describe it. For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Wow.
And yeah, Weathering with You, it's just like the same shit again. Like it looks nice, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it's why are we like utilizing this high-end animation studio for these nice looking movies and shit for just the
They
same
tell the same story
goddamn
over and
story
over.
again?
Yep.
And I mean, like the anime landscape in general it likes repeating itself over and over again.
That is
and that's
for
sort of
sure.
what I felt with like watching or like staying up to date with like the anime TV shows. And like the cycle of like the seasonals that have been coming out for within like the past a couple of years, like all of them feel like different versions of each other, and we're just regurgitating like slightly altered versions of the same story, except now she speaks Russian or whatever the fuck, you know. So like some stupid like quirk like that to make it seem like it sticks out,
Oh, it's so unique.
but it doesn't.
Yeah, you've never seen
it's
something
really
like
the
this
exact
before.
fucking same, you know, and it pisses me off. And that's sort of what Weathering with You is. It's not a terrible movie. It just like it just fails to be unique within
Yeah.
this dude Makoto Shinkai's filmography, and also it failed to stand out like as a film. And it like
It
brings up
feels-
like these
yeah.
other themes and topics of like, here are these issues with whatever societal thing. Like they fucking her power is she can make the sun appear when it's raining. That she'll make it like stop raining or whatever. And there's like a flood or whatever this happens or whatever that happens like near the end of this shit. And they
Of course.
the like sacrifice. They like sacrifice. I don't even remember, but it was for the sake of their romance. They do something, but the like a big heavy rainstorm happens. So it's like they're sacrificing their love for like essentially all these lives of these people and like all the
Classic.
infrastructure and shit. It makes no sense. It's like,
Yeah.
are you really doing that?
That's the thing with, Makoto Shinkai.
Stupid as shit.
I feel like whatever your first introduction to his movies will be your favorite. So for me, that was Garden of Words.
Oh, okay. Is that the same also?
For you, yes. It's less supernatural, which I think I appreciated more. I like when he's more grounded with his stories, because the way he uses supernatural elements is the same in the rest of the movies, from what I can tell. Like, you have your meteor that's coming.
Yeah, your name was
supernatural.
Like
you're time skipping, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have to deal with this in order to, break up the lovers, because there's always that in all of his movies. So what he does have, like, they're emotional movies. They're very, rich with emotion, and the first movie that you'll see from him will kind of, ignite a spark in you. But then you watch the rest of his discography and you're like,
wait a minute.
Oh, he just did the same thing. It's like the same emotions, nothing new. So then it's easy to become, disillusioned with his style, just because while the animation is so fantastic and it's beautiful and the soundtrack is all great, it does seem overwrought by the time you've watched two of his movies.
Yeah, I mean, like, even just two.
Okay,
like, even while I was watching
Yeah.
Suzume, like, a year ago or so, I was like, this is the same shit. What is he doing?
Yeah.
But, like, that exact fucking ending where they separate, seemingly one of them is dead or something, and then, like, a time skip happens and they, like, pass each other on the street. It's like, oh, it's the person again. Oh my god, I'm reunited.
And it's
with
the
them. It's
potential
like,
of a future. It's like, why? You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like, come on.
That pisses me off the
they
most.
do. It's a successful formula, and people love it. I think we're probably in the minority of just, like, kind of not really loving him.
Well, yeah, they're
maybe
positively
the movie that
rated,
you watch.
like all of them, I think.
Yeah, because they do strike a chord with people in a really unique way. But I guess that uniqueness, it wears at some point when every movie
films you've
is
seen
the
of him.
same
That's
kind
not a
of
good
unique.
thing, though. That's not a
No,
good
it's
thing.
not.
Like, as you watch
It's
a director more, you should, like, learn
I
to,
would hope
like,
so.
understand and appreciate their artwork,
Their styles
and, like,
and
where they're
influences
coming
and
from.
their-
Their style, yeah, exactly. But for him, it's the opposite. The more you see from him, the worse they
It
get.
seems almost corporate.
Like, it doesn't. Yeah,
But,
it
yeah,
doesn't, like,
yeah.
even matter the order you go into. I mean, like you said, I would agree with that. Probably the first one you see is your favorite. To me, that makes sense for this guy especially. I remember seeing freshman year, Your Name came out, and then slightly after that, I watched it, like, with a couple people, I think, and I was just, like, sitting there and like, oh my god, this is the coolest.
This is really cool. Yeah, like,
and I do like a lot of aspects of that one, but even itself doesn't. It isn't saved from that formula that he falls back upon.
He doesn't do anything new. Is the problem?
Which is upsetting.
He does the one thing he does really well, and people come back for it.
Trick pony.
But there's a problem where, how successful does that make you as a filmmaker, as a director? I mean, successful in one way, but
yeah, I mean, he's one of the most. He's one of the biggest in terms of anime directors, like exactly. Animated film directors from Japan. Like, yeah, like his name is pretty high up there. So
yeah.
It's brought a great success and brought me great annoyance, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
It is what it is. On my end, a lot, when I was going through Brady Corbett's filmography and I'm looking at the stuff that he's a part of, so many of the movies that he's been an actor of have been on my watch list. So, I was in a mood and I decided to kind of go through the movies that he's been a part of, just because they are widely celebrated movies that have been on my watch list for a long time. And so firstly, I checked out Funny Games from famed German, Austrian director Michael Haneke, or however you say his name,
I don't know.
Who has done a ton of very famous highbrow auteur kind of movies with The Piano Teacher, Amour, Cache, and I watched Funny Games, but I watched the American remake, the one that came out in 2007. And it is a very unique movie. It's incredibly austere and cold and like rigid in its depiction of trauma and violence and like thrilling kind of build up. And it's done in such a meta way that is unique to this director, where he loves to, I guess, because this is my first movie from him. I'm not saying that I'm an expert on him, but from what I can tell of various people talking about him, he loves to kind of, engage with the audience in a very unique way, in a, fourth wall breaking way, and kind of toying with the conventions of a movie structure. And so in this movie, you're introduced to a family, but the family doesn't matter at all. And you're introduced to these kind of horrible violence that are soon enacted on them. But because you are so kind of removed from connecting with his family, you are instead viewing it in such a calculated way that is clearly, the intent from the director. And it's such a unique experience because I've never been, I don't know, treated like this. He has a very unique way of engaging with the audience. And I think that's why many people either love or hate him. It is, I couldn't, decide while I was watching it, do I love this or do I hate it? Where it's very much kind of winking and nodding, maybe not so much winking, but, addressing the audience and their role in viewing a movie. It's very heady, it's very pretentious, incredibly so.
Yes,
but I think it works where it's a unique experience and it makes you think. It does make you think, and it feels corny to say, but it's really strange being so close to all this, violence, which is not really, it's not even gratuitous. It's not shown on screen for the most part. It's really interesting because it's all stimulated implied to some extent and implied, but obviously just as visceral as, a bloody slasher would be, just in a different way. I think, and that shows, clear vision, really restrained touch from the director, and obviously he has something he would like to say, and it's up to the audience to be receptive to that, which I think is very cool. There's no one doing stuff like this from what I've seen in, I don't know, 1,000 movies or whatever. He seems like a very unique voice in film. And I'm glad I kind of checked out what he was up to, because it's a strange one. I don't know if I would recommend it to anyone besides like people who are interested in
into
film
films
and,
and acceptable
Kino
of, like,
and
weird
cinephile,
violence.
yeah, because it's very much a deconstruction of that kind of movie of like like a slasher or a drama or a thriller, but it's just the package that you get is so much different than any other movie that kind of use those taglines to create a expectation, and Haneke just takes that expectation that you have and utilizes it to his own ends. He puppets you as an audience member, which is, it's fun. It doesn't happen often, so definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I've seen the original Funny Games. I've seen a couple of them from him. I've seen the 6 most popular from him, other than this Funny Games remake, which is interesting and noteworthy because for most remakes they're handled by a person like totally very far removed from like who originally worked on it. But for him, he does the original Funny Games in 1997 in I forget what language. I think German or something like that. And then in 2007, 10 years later, he remakes it in American English, which is interesting. I don't know all the differences because I haven't seen the remake, and I also haven't you probably have to watch them sort of side by side. That, I mean, if you really want to know all the differences, or you just watch somebody on YouTube.
I've seen some video essays.
I've definitely seen those also.
Changes. It looks mostly shot for shot, like
you
have the same beats, but with different
but to appeal
affectations.
to a wider audience who he wants to address more, like
Yeah,
in English speaking, like people who consume Hollywood films is probably who he wants to like pick and target
it is the widest
with
audience.
this, like
Hmm.
with funny games. I think he's trying to go after those people with the American English version of it.
Hmm.
But also those people aren't going to check out the film. I mean, we just said for his stuff in
Likely
general,
not.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it for like most people unless they like were already super into like these tour films or like wanted to
Hmm.
be. Um, but yeah, it is sort of in a weird spot, I guess, because of that. Because I feel like the American version of it is tailored towards he wants to push it out to this
Hmm.
normal people who only watch uh, one type of film or just a couple types of film, and just
Yeah,
be
it
like,
is
this
interesting
is I'm
because
making fun of you, sort of thing.
you get, bigger named actors with Naomi Watts and Tim Roth.
Right?
But
Yeah,
really,
that
it's a
too.
very small cast in this movie. It's a short movie. Not a ton happens, but it's very engaging, and you know, you have to be along for the ride because it rips you along with it. All the performances are fantastic. I thought it is such a strange feeling because you don't connect with the family, which is such a strange choice to make. And it's obviously purposely done because there are moments where you're kind of just left to sit with this family who has been, spoiler alert, but like abused in many ways.
Hmm.
And you are just watching it without really having any backstory to connect with or emotional attachment with them, but you're just viewing what is essentially torture and horror in such a strange, disconnected way. It's a really interesting feeling. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on this one. It's a
Hmm.
weird one.
Yeah, it's unique, and his stuff as a whole, he's a pretty unique, interesting director. I don't love all of his stuff. I like most of his things,
Hmm.
or border on
You
like
can
really like to.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. But he's not like making the stuff that's like my favorite things ever. But I do really like pretty much all the stuff I've seen from him
Hmm.
thus far. So yeah. On my end, I decided to see Grindhouse, which is that Quentin
Hmm.
Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez making the Death Proof and Planet Terror. They sort of combined into one thing. These two directors, I don't know, they're friends, I guess, and they grew up enjoying similar films from like the 70s, which I think the genre is just called Grindhouse, which is what the film is named after. Where it's just like they were these really bad, cheap, uh, maybe mostly horror films where it's just like very gratuitous and a lot of like violence and blood and sex appeal and stuff like that, and just
Hmm.
bad acting, probably bad effects, and just like random stuff like that, really raunchy, really corny, like in every way. But I think, both grew up watching those things and they appreciate them a great deal. So this is them sort of getting together and making a film of their like a film on films on their own, sort of working together that like parody this type of genre thing that's long been dead, but they're bringing it back in 2007, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so yeah,
With your
Planet
ex
Terror,
and your
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
and Planet Terror is directed by Robert Rodriguez. Death Proof directed by Quentin Tarantino. I was gonna do. I thought Letterboxd because it was like the three movies separately. Because there's Grindhouse, which is the two of them together, and then Planet Terror on its own, Death Proof on its own. So I'm like, okay, I can watch this thing, this experience, and
Okay. We'll
log
review
all
that.
three of them. But that's not really how it works because they both are edited down in this Grindhouse cut to be about an hour and a half each. And then
Okay.
they have extended versions, which is what appears on Letterboxd. So I'm like,
Huh.
damn it, I have to watch those separately to be able to properly log it, Peter. But
Dang.
I still came out overall enjoying this mostly, sort of. Um, they do it in such a way where it's like uh, it, it's meant to be like if you were literally watching a double feature from back in the day at like a movie theater or a drive-in or whatever, where they have like they got themselves and a couple other directors to make like fake movie trailers that were also sort of like just like dumb, raunchy, corny, like type of films that would in theory be eventually made like from the time. And those play like before and in between the films. And the films are edited in such a way where they got like those like dated looking effects where they got the vertical lines to show like how much the film thing has been like roughed up over the years. Or like random moments where like just the stuff cuts out because like the film reel like it was lost or damaged or something. And stuff like that. And to me, things like that are cute. They're doing like this silly little style thing. And overall, this thing mostly just feels as one big experiment between the two of them, just sort of making something for themselves rather than I'm going to make my next big thing that is going to hit the streets and everybody's going to be wowing over it and love it and all that stuff like that. It feels like they're making it for themselves, pretty much. And like, I mean, on their own, the Planet Terror, I'm not super into. I think it's like, it borders on like to okay, and it just is that super corny like raunchy plot. Like I've seen some of Robert Rodriguez's other stuff. It does remind me of Machete, which I think he made. There's like a fake trailer for it in this, and then I think he later made that film after, or he made it before. But I think he made it after. Where is the stupid film of his? Machete 2010.
It came out the same year, I guess. So.
No, it came out in 2010. So this one's 2007. And then Machete came
the
out 3
original
years later.
Machete is 2007.
Yeah. Wait, what? What the hell am I looking at?
That's what I'm seeing.
I see Machete.
Oh, wait, there's two versions of...
Is there?
Okay, yeah.
I think the version you're looking at is probably the trailer version.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Letterboxd is weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, I mean, he did that, and it reminds me of that where it's just like I saw Machete and Machete Kills. There's two of them. I saw both of them before this, and I didn't like either of those. Those were just stupid as shit and like annoying. And this one also felt a little bit similar. I think I like it slightly more than those, but also just like a corny sort of. It feels like a mess where you're just bouncing between all these characters who aren't really that interesting, and it's like this weird zombie sort of outbreak, but it's never like really explained what they are. Like some of them are just straight up zombies. Some of them have some sentience of like who they were or who they currently are because they haven't like transformed, even though they look just as fucked up as the people acting like zombies. Like it doesn't make sense. And I know that's you could always argue that that's what it's supposed to be because it's supposed to be this like it's supposed to be mimicking these bad films from this time period of this genre. But like to me, a bad movie is still a bad movie. Like you could say it's parodying this thing, but it's not doing it in a good way. You know what I mean?
It falls in the same pit
like Black Dynamite,
which I like,
for example. It's making fun of like it's parodying these also like shitty movies, but it's like somewhat it's such like a much higher elevation than those ones. Like that movie slaps as far as parody movies go. That's like one of the better ones.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's funny and it's
replicating it can only get you so far.
Yeah, and that's what feels like Grindhouse is. It feels like it's just replicating the shitty things without like actually improving them or like making fun of it too heavily. It just feels like it's reenacting them more so than anything. So I don't like it all too much. Death Proof, on the other hand, feels a little bit more self-aware. It's by Tarantino, so it has that dialogue of his sort of mixed into this weird Grindhouse vibe, where it's sort of split into two halves. And the first half feels a lot more of that Grindhouse energy, where you got the like the video messing up or the audio messing up sometimes. And then the second half that's basically absent of that. And I feel like, that is sort of intentional, that he's sort of breaking away from it in the second half. And it feels much more like a fully realized story and like stronger execution. Like if I were to rate them separately, I would probably give Planet Terror like a 4 and then Death Proof like a 7 or so. And they average out to, I round up, so it's a 6, I guess. Even though it's probably a 5. Some of the trailers weren't that great either. There was like, it felt more like they were trying to be funny than they were like actually funny. Type of thing for like the stuff, like the trailers people were making in between and before the films. But But yeah, I don't know if I could even recommend this because it is long. It's 3 hours or a little bit over that because it's 1.5 hour films put together. It's an interesting experience overall. Like it's probably better with people there.
Hmm.
You know, again,
It's just
probably
yeah.
better than me sitting in my bed on my lonesome doing that than with a group of people sort of or mostly invested in it. Death Proof is definitely better
I've been
than
meaning to
Planetary.
watch them, obviously, because I've watched just about everything else from Tarantino at this point,
Yeah, this
and
was the
that's the
last
last
one
one.
from him, I think, for
Yeah.
me.
So I've been meaning to watch it, and it does seem just like it's a personal celebration for them to
Yeah,
just kind of remake the movies that they fell in love with
yeah.
as you know when they were beginning to make movies. Um, on my end, I followed up one auteur filmmaker with another and went to watch Melancholia from, we
Oh,
were just talking about him,
yes,
our favorite Lars von Trier,
sir.
who is a very particular filmmaker.
Yeah,
And this one is maybe one of his more straightforward ones, possibly. Like,
yeah, maybe.
it is obviously very strange and, you know, austere and uh, removed, but it, I think, I don't know how much I love this movie. I'm just gonna be real. I think it's a good movie, but I do feel the weight of the depression that it's trying to portray. It does wear on you. It's not a really enjoyable watching
Yeah,
experience.
which is
I
how
think I
most of his
really,
sort of are. They're very
yeah,
negative.
yes, and it weighs on you.
Yeah,
So they're not trying to be, you know, your next blockbuster, whatever, but it is, for better for worse, it is rough to watch. Uh, I think I like the first half of this movie. It's roughly split up into like act one, act two, not really, but there are two, you know, individual stories that are being told. And I like the first one better. I thought the wedding was awful, and I liked
in the good
that.
way.
I Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just, you know, the terrible, never-ending party that you can't leave. And it's just like, oh, I have to
Yeah.
be talking with these people now. It's like, oh, these are
Because
all like
usually,
people
yeah. Because usually
that
wedding
I,
scenes in films are like really hyped up, and it like in Mamma Mia, for example. I mean, that
yeah,
was slightly
yeah.
different, I guess, because it happens, it doesn't happen, or whatever. Um, but yeah, usually they're like hyped up, and it's like a cool like social exchange
Right,
is
right.
occurring, and
You
like
got
whatever
you got your
like is
deer
it?
hunter
Yeah,
where
I
you
love that
have
one.
like a whole hour of a
Yeah,
wedding
basically
and it's
like
just
40 minutes,
celebration and it's
which
incredible.
slaps. Or The
And in this
Godfather
one you
has a good
have,
one, has a good wedding scene
yep,
in the
yep,
first
yeah,
one.
yeah. In this one you have essentially 1 hour of a wedding that is just
Hmm.
slowly falling to pieces
Hmm.
as the main character is obviously falling deeper and deeper into a depressive state. And I liked the first half. I thought it really it put you in her shoes and it kind of brought you along. You're feeling what she's feeling, and it depicts it really well. I think the second half is where it fell apart for me. I just didn't, connect with Charlotte Gainsbourg character as much. I like the idea of, the planet coming and destroying everything, and that being a metaphor for depression, suicide, whatever, all these bad things. But yeah, it's just not really an enjoyable watch. I think it's well made. The you
Yeah.
know the cinematography great. Performances are all really solid. I really like Kirsten Dunst in this one, and I thought Charlotte Gainsbourg was good in it as well as all the other actors. But it just it kind of dragged for me towards the end, where you're like, "Yep, I understand. I get it. I thank you,
Hmm.
Lars. Are we gonna wrap this up at any point?" Um, I think it feels more like a personal exploration of the feeling, like what he was feeling whenever he wrote this or created. And I feel like that is how Lars does his movies. It's very much kind of ideas that he has that he wants to explore, and I don't know how he ended up becoming such a, you know, a fairly influential voice in cinema. But you know, he's a weird guy,
Hmm.
so I think it's a good movie, just not one I would really want to watch ever again.
Yeah, same for this one, and I think I agree with you for the first half with the wedding stuff
Hmm.
being like more interesting and I don't know, just a bit better. Like it felt more grounded, and he's going for like this weird, like supernatural, like you said, metaphor in the
Hmm.
second half. But like by that point, yeah, I did. You just kind of get lost in it because it feels like it's like I don't even know what it's doing after a certain
Yeah,
point.
it's very slow. You're just following this family going, you know, day by day, watching the planet get closer. And
Yeah.
like, obviously, there, you know, you could draw how, like, oh, that's a metaphor for how people, you know, view oncoming catastrophe and love to ogle it and don't, you know, recognize the danger of what, you know, depression is or whatever. But it's like while you're watching it,
Hmm.
you're just kind of sitting there and what you know, if you're trying to create a movie that makes you think and like allows a lot of time for the audience to sit with their own thoughts, you can't make it boring. It's like
No, I
try and make it
know.
meditative or something like that. I think this movie missed the mark somewhat at that point, but you know, if you're going through Lars von Trier's films, this isn't necessarily my favorite of his that I've watched, so it is what it is.
Hmm. Yeah, nice. Um, I did all the movies I wanted to mention. If you have any more, you could by all
I
means
just
just take it away.
want to talk about one more. That is Mysterious Skin from Gregoraki, which
Oh yeah,
we lightly discussed. I think it. I just want to. It's a
in
very
person,
cool
not on the
movie.
show, just so people
Yeah.
don't like.
Yes.
Oh my god, I'm missing out on their
What? No. No. No.
2 minute mysterious skin conversation. It was not recorded.
This is a really interesting movie just because of how it's shot with the amount of, you know, front-facing. I don't know, portraits of the characters and them just staring into the camera as they address whoever. It's a really interesting choice to make. It's very influent, like unflinching and like cold and austere, in just how they depict it. It's a messed up movie, and
Yeah.
you know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this was a great movie, never want to watch again. Just with like how the things that it deals with and the exploration of trauma and you know repression and everything that goes with the the themes of this movie. But I really liked the directing. I think it made what was perhaps a I don't know. It's a fairly formulaic concept, I think. Like I've seen this kind of movie before, but not in this way. And I think it's a mixture of the filmmaking, the writing, and the acting that all gives it that spark that sets it apart. Good movie. I
Hmm.
I don't think it's like one of the saddest or depressing like or like horrible movies that I've watched. I could probably rewatch one of these, but I do think it tackles some interesting and sad topics that I
Yeah,
would recommend.
it's got some dark subject matter that maybe isn't
Hmm.
suitable for everybody, for everyone's taste. It might weird them out too much.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is
it's
weird
very,
and it is well directed though, for sure.
it's definitely unflinching, and you know, it's a bit abrasive in doing so, but I think it works.
Hmm.
But moving on, I did not watch any TV or shows or anime
Oh really? I just have
this
one,
week
and
once.
it's
So,
pretty small.
mm-hmm.
I picked up Seinfeld again, which is a show that I
Mm-hmm.
is a show I started watching 3 years or so ago, and I did a decent amount
Mm-hmm.
of that during school. And then at some point I stopped, and then I went back to it after like a year. I'm like, oh yeah, this is still a thing that I'm watching, I guess. And I watched a little bit more, and then I stopped for like however long, and now here I am again. I'm on season 8 out of 9 right now, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm nearly done with it. It's as far as sitcoms go, it's quite nice. I remember my takeaways from 3 years ago or however long ago, when I was watching the earlier seasons. I was singing like I was surprised by how like sort of relevant to a certain extent that it still was in terms of just like the social whatever aspects or feelings that are being reflected by the characters and how like funny it remains despite being made by this point 30 or however many years ago.
That's like 30, 40.
Yeah, and it's dated in some ways in terms of its jokes. So it's occasionally like homophobic or racist or stuff like that on like a minor level. Not like I don't think it's too terrible in that way. And I think as it's gone along, it's sort of left that area of bigotry for laughs type of stuff, which again only happened on occasion. But when it was there, it was a little annoying. But it is, I don't know what to say about it. It's funny. It's nice. I couldn't tell you if like certain seasons are better than the others because I'm watching it over like such a long period of time. I think most people probably would say the earlier seasons are better with most of these shows. I think this was also, or like specifically the season that also had Larry David still writing it because he was writing it with Jerry Seinfeld, who stars as himself basically, or like a characterized version of himself. And then Larry David, they're like both writing it, and then at some point Larry David stopped to like go do whatever other
Curb.
which
Curb
which he's also has he also been doing that for like the 20 some shit
a long
years?
time now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, damn. Yeah, which I want to see that at some point.
Yeah. I've never watched Seinfeld, but everyone knows
it's
a
decent,
part of culture.
It's iconic.
I do. I'll probably.
I think
I do have
overall
to check it
overall
out.
it is funny. It's enjoyable. It's nice. It's very episodic at first, and then eventually they introduce like overarching narratives, random things. Like sometimes it usually doesn't
arcs.
last for like more than an episode or two, where they're mentioning things that happened like in the past type of stuff. But every once in a while, you get something that like comes back from like a previous season, which usually is done in a funny way. So. I mean, as far as sitcoms go, I've seen a handful of them. Most of the ones that I've seen, I watched in like middle school, early high school. I guess there's still some that I want to check out, but as far as sitcoms go, this is a decent one. It's good. It's a good thing to do while you're doing something else, which is all sitcoms. But this is up there for those, I guess. So yeah.
All right. Moving on to video games.
Gaming.
I played a lot. This last month,
He's been going
I
at
may
it.
not have watched as many movies, but I played many, many, many more video games. So
Yeah.
I could try and keep mine somewhat quick as I go through. Firstly, I continued playing Undertale and finished that off and did like the whatever ending, true pacifist ending.
Oh yeah.
And it's a good game. I don't know if it's as formative for me as it was for so many other people. When I play this game, I kind of see it more as some of its influences. Obviously it's kind of cool because it's taking classic JRPG tropes and subverting it to some extent, but the subversion and kind of absurdist comedy is maybe a little overdone for me at this point. I understand that when this first came out, it was, incredibly subversive and unique for the time, and all the humor and the satire was super unique and cool. But now it's a bit oversaturated with what they did, and I don't know if I can separate that for me. Just where
The game from like the fan base and like what has resulted from,
and like what
the
it has created.
Undertale inspired RPG with themes of depression type of shit. Like whatever. Amori is like an example of that, which I haven't played, but I assume people like that one. I don't know how good it is, but it's probably good also. Like if you like Undertale.
Yeah, it's cool. It's incredible that it was made by one person, but I don't find it as incredible as many people.
Sure, you're
Maybe
not in
a
love with it. You're
masterpiece,
not,
but
in
certainly
the
a good
fandom.
game.
Yeah.
I do like, and I think I could say that I love it.
Okay.
I just don't put it as a masterpiece.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion.
No,
You play any games?
Keep going. I only have two.
Oh,
You have
only
more
two.
than me,
Okay, so yes, I do have. So after this, still going on my indie kick. I chose to check out Signalis, which was recommended to me after I was like, looking for games like 1000x Resist, just because I thought that was super cool, or 100 times Resist. I don't remember.
I think it's
But
1000. Yeah.
that's a really cool game that has a lot of like, heady psychological elements to it. And so I played Signalis, which is essentially Silent Hill 2, but with, space cyborg lesbians.
Cool.
And that's obviously very
Awesome.
derivative. It's a really cool game. The art is really, really great. The art style is, CRTV elements, but with like a pixelated, almost 2.5D, where you're kind of viewing from like a camera lens, but you're also, point and clicking around. It's a survival horror game. So this is maybe the first survival horror game I've really played. I now want to go and check out more because I was always kind of terrified of survival horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill and whatever because I don't like playing horror games. This one dipped my feet into it. It's a little better. It's dealing more with like cosmic horror and like Lovecraftian horror, which I thought is really interesting because I like that stuff a lot. And I think it's really hard to depict Lovecraftian horror in media in general. I just think that text is the best way to explore those themes because the imagination of the human mind is so much more terrifying than whatever can be depicted on screen. But I like the unique kind of game breaking elements that they incorporate into this one. And it's, would highly, highly recommend it. It's a cool one, a good entry into the survival horror genre, just because it's not too terrifying. And, it's so interesting because this is the first survival horror game I've actually played. And essentially they're just like escape rooms with like, a lot of puzzle elements where you go to this room and you pick up a key here and then you use that key in this chest, which will get you a key card that you can use to get into this safe over here.
Yeah, it's very
and when you
survival
get that
horror
safe,
shits.
then you get a code which allows you to go into this terminal, and then you can use that
It gives
program
you a
in
clue
order to
to
decode
enter this code.
Yeah. Yep. It's very much that, and I like that. It's a really cool kind of fun, satisfying, puzzling game. But then you get that survival horror element where the monsters will always come after you. You only have a certain amount of guns. Are you gonna try and stealth by them, or just like run through them, ignore them, because they'll be like kind of segmented to their own rooms. They don't really follow you from room to room, which is nice. But yeah, really cool, unique indie experience. Great soundtrack. One that I like. Yeah, it's a really cool game. Would highly recommend. Signalis.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of it. It's got insanely high reviews on Steam.
Yeah,
people love this
people
shit.
love it, and I think it's worth it. There's like a cool. There are a lot of really cool kind of moments and set pieces in the game that are really fun to explore. After that, I continued my indie grind. Not really. I played Portal 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
Kind of continuing my puzzle game grind, I guess. Because these are classic games.
Yeah.
And incredibly influential in gaming culture, I guess. And I had never played it. Never played any of Valve's games. But I want to check out these ones. And what can I say? They're classics for a reason. They really hold up exceptionally well. So well. The actual puzzle design is fantastic. The narrative experience that you get to explore through the puzzles is surprisingly engaging. Obviously, everyone knows GLaDOS and Wheatley. They're very recognizable characters at this point. But going through it personally, and just getting to experience it is a very different, experience than just watching a YouTube video about it or whatever, as I've done at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's something to experience it for yourself. The puzzles are great. They kind of scratch that itch of being difficult but solvable, and it's a really kind of weird physics-based puzzle, which is haven't really played many games like it, even at this point after it burst on the scene and created a bunch of clones or
Sure.
inspirations, let's just say. But yeah, I love the kind of concept of the game, which I as much as the Portal games are cemented into the culture of video games at this point, I really was unfamiliar with just about everything of it.
Oh, really?
Besides, like maybe the main characters,
Okay.
I didn't know much. Like,
You don't know how the gameplay works?
I was familiar with like the cake is a lie or whatever, and like the wider like narratives of Portal, but I had
I don't even know
never
what that is.
actually exactly like it's really cool kind of going through it because while you're doing all of these puzzles, the reasons you're doing the puzzles and the overall like story of the games is just enough to keep you interested and running along, and it's very satisfying. Would highly recommend. They're super super short.
Yeah.
Like the first one is like a couple hours, and the second one is like maybe 4 or 5 hours. And you're just it's a very quick game. You're just continuing to progress. Really cool.
Yeah,
And,
I've
they're
played
classics for a reason.
I've played a part of Portal 2's co-op campaign mode
I
thing. I
did
don't know.
not play the co-op
I don't know.
stuff.
I don't know
but,
how
yeah.
different the story is, but I think they
Very
do.
different.
They do make. Oh, really? But
I
between
think it's like a
between
completely
the between solo and two player.
I think yeah, it's
Really?
a completely different narrative from.
Do you need
solo
that
to
for the
two-player.
complete experience? You need the co-op
I
version
guess
of it. I
so,
don't know how that
yeah.
works. We could run it at some point. I don't know how. But like,
They're
yeah,
fun.
I've played part of the co-op for that, like on my friend's 360 in like grade school or some shit,
Mhm.
and we just got completely butt stuck on like some random puzzle
Yeah.
and we're like, forget
No,
it.
that-
And
that's
I haven't
completely
touched
fair.
it since. So I know the basic gameplay. I know its influence,
Yeah.
and how it's quite strong. And I've been meaning to get to those, but I will at some point.
At some point.
They just always sit there in the list of like, yeah, that's the thing I should be doing. Probably.
Yeah.
I might even own them. I have no idea. I might just own
Those
one,
are games
one or
like
both of
that
them.
are just like in everyone's library
Yeah,
for some
exactly.
reason. It's like, oh yeah,
Well,
I guess they were
if
offering
it's on
it free
Steam,
for
it's
like
Valve.
10
yeah.
years ago.
They go on sale sometimes for like 90% or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get this for 50 cents. Hell yeah. Give me that shit.
Great. Highly recommend.
Yeah, cool.
After that, I for some reason wanted to play like a platformer, so I played Blasphemous, which I don't know if you're familiar, but that is like the kind of
Oh, yeah,
Souls-like
yeah.
platformer set in
Well,
like
it's a
really
Metroidvania, right?
yeah, yeah. It's a
Blasphemous.
Metroidvania.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool one. There are obviously design elements that I really like, and I think it's super cool art direction wise, and the whole world that you explore is very cool. I like that kind of weird Souls-like world where things are ending. Like it's just like a world on the brink of decay, or a world in the process of decaying,
Yeah.
where it's like ruins everywhere, ancient cities that were once amazing are now crumbling, and it's just at those kind of worlds are really fun to explore and serve really well with world building from the obviously developer side. But I can't say I really love this game. I thought the combat was a little too simple for me, and the platforming was not satisfying. Like there are moments where I was just beating my head against the wall because like you will just instantly die if you
Oh.
fall off the ledge or whatever,
Sure.
and like the actual controls of the platforming are very unintuitive in some ways and not really satisfying. I still think it's a cool game because of everything else, but actually playing the game was not the most fun I've had. So I'd give it like a 6 out of 10 maybe. It was like a fun game,
Is that-
cool, but I probably won't play it again.
Yeah. I'm guessing if I were to play, because I know a little bit about this game, I'm guessing
Hmm.
if I were to do it, I would feel quite similarly. Because I'm not the
Yeah.
biggest fan of Metroidvanias, and I like how it looks a lot, and I think it's got a solid vibe, and like the atmosphere or whatever looks cool.
Hmm.
But I think if I had to like sit down and actually play it, I'd be like, God damn
Yeah,
it,
it's maybe easier to
God damn
appreciate
this
from
thing.
afar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I sort of planned on looking at it. Just appreciate it from afar. How many games do you have like in total?
I'm halfway.
Okay.
So
Can I
I
speak
technically
now?
played one. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I don't
Throw
know.
your thoughts out
Oh
there.
yeah, I ended up finishing Fire Emblem Engage on Maddening mode, which was quite
Hmm.
nice. I think last time I was like, yeah, I haven't really been challenged that hard yet. It's been pretty doable so far
Yeah, it's
in
like I
Code.
played through it before, and
Only
I
a
know what
slight
I'm doing.
jinx is what that was, because some of the
Hmm.
maps like gave me aids like almost completely. Like most of the challenging, like the super tough stuff from that game come from the DLC maps, and by doing them you get the more experience and various money items and
Hmm.
stuff, and the potentially stronger emblems from the emblem DLC maps. And then that all of those things will make going back to the main game slightly easier. Um, but like those maps themselves, some of them are just like so. It's such a headache. Some of them.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like there's such a specific way to try to have to beat it.
it's just
Um,
like there's for those and some of the main story ones, especially near the end. It's just like there's so many goddamn reinforcements. Like they do a good version of reinforcements, which I like on normal and hard mode. They do the same thing on Maddening. It's just Maddening has way too fucking many. Like an
mm,
absurd,
that's the
an
problem.
ungodly amount. But you're not meant to defeat most of them. They usually just to exist to be like, hey player, you better be at this point by the time these guys are arriving, so you don't have to fight so many of them, type of thing. Rather than like you need to fight all these. Because on Maddening, after a certain point, a lot of the reinforcements they like don't give experience. They have like this personal skill where
Mm,
they don't give experience because the point of it is like you shouldn't be fighting these guys. Probably you should probably
right,
be on
you
your
should
way
be
to the
moving
other part of the
on.
map or
Yeah.
whatever. So they serve in that regard, sort of as like, uh, yeah, like milestone. Like you should be here rather than fucking with these dudes,
Yeah, they're
type of
more of
thing.
a
But
like a
sometimes you do have
an
to deal with them
obstacle.
because they just show up in your
Hmm.
face. But they're a good version of reinforcements in the series where they appear, and on the turn they appear, they just sit there. They do nothing. So they give you a moment to react to
Okay.
them compared to
Yeah,
like Awakening, where they spawn out of a staircase in front of your
and
units,
then
and then they just like
attack. Yeah,
immediately just go and kill half your dudes or whatever.
yeah.
Which to me is like kind of bullshitty, but like that's like in
It
theory,
is
if
bullshit,
yeah,
but it's
if
like that's JRPG shit.
yeah, well,
So
also because also like video games early on, they're trying to be more realistic, right? And like as time has
hmm.
gone on, we're trying to strike a better balance in like difficulty in game design and caring less about like what is like applicable in the real world type of thing. Because like yeah, if you invaded a castle and you were like sending your troops in or whatever, and then all of a sudden the 40 dudes appeared from the staircases underneath you, you'd probably get butt fucked a little bit, like in that way, versus like okay, now here's the dudes, they're slowly appearing, they're in your face now, but you have a moment to like react to them, is on a
Hmm.
gameplay like basis, I think is much stronger, and Engage succeeds with that quite a lot. And yeah, I don't think I have much to say about it. I skipped the fucking cutscenes. I don't care about the
No,
story at this point.
it's just a fun game
And
to
yeah,
play
it's
through.
it's it's really nice, and the character building is great fun. And I plan on returning this game at least twice to do another
To do
Maddening run
everything.
with no DLC, and then do another run on hard mode just for fun. Like after that, and then by that point, I would have used every character on a team
Hmm.
at some point. So yeah, I don't know. It's really nice. I think you
Yeah,
should finish it.
and
I
I've
think you
said
should
it a
get off your
million
ass and
times. I've
finish
been
it.
meaning to. I want to, and I will.
No, yeah,
I
it
will.
it is long. Like this recent run of mine took maybe 100 hours, but I also take
Hmm.
super long time doing all the stupid extra shit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, this one took around 100 hours. I think my first one took around that long, and then my second one was like 20 hours less. It was under 80 for the one without DLC. So I would
Hmm.
estimate most people would probably beat it in like, I don't know, the how long to beat shit. It makes me feel like I'm a stupid head for like I feel like I'm wasting all this time because I mean let me see how long most people
No,
would take it for like
yeah.
it's like 40 hours or some shit. Yeah,
For
41
engaged,
hours
those are
for main
big
story. That
games.
doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. How the fuck are you doing that? Or like main plus extra 65 and a half. I'm taking the 10 hours above that
70,
for not
yeah.
deals for with no
Hmm.
DLC, and then with DLC it's
Yeah.
an extra 20 on top of that. I don't know what I'm
Yep.
doing wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm that stupid or what.
No, I don't know. I also end up usually taking like 10 hours more
I know.
than what they say.
That's how I
But
feel.
it's also, I feel like I play quicker than maybe what most people do, just in my endeavor to try and complete, as much of a game as I can in one playthrough.
Hmm.
But it's how long to beat is just a overall general view at it, be like, oh, this
Yeah.
is like a 20-hour game. Okay.
No,
Maybe
yeah.
I'll put that off for a little while.
I usually scale it to myself, so if I see someone's like 50 hours, I'm like probably 70 or 60 for me. It's like that type of thing. Like a certain percentage of it, like I take 10 or 15% longer or something than whatever they say.
Hmm.
So yeah.
All right, back to me.
Yes, sir.
All right, I continued in my indie game exploration, playing Return of the Obra Dinn. It was
Oh,
by
yeah.
developer Lucas Pope, who did Papers, Please. This one, Return of the Obra Dinn, is a very, very cool one. It's a graphic adventure, so it's like it's almost point and click, but you can kind of move around.
Hmm.
Essentially, you are a insurance agent, investigating what has been a missing ship that has, appeared after years. And it's just, there were 60 people aboard when it left, and, several years later, it's back with no one on board. And you are sent to the ship to try and figure out what happened to all 60 of the passengers. And you are given a supernatural compass called the Memento Mori, which allows you to obviously see the moment of death, of whatever bodies you can find on the ship, and whatever bodies you find in the memories, which is really interesting. It's a very cool kind of logic puzzle based game where it feels like it could almost be a board game where you are given snapshots of time in time where you can kind of walk around the ship and see essentially a freeze frame of a moment where someone died, and you can see that body. You're not giving any clues as to who they are,
Hmm.
but you're trying to match essentially 60 names on a crew ledger to 60 faces in like a painting or sketch of the crew. And it's a really engaging kind of loop that you get into where you're going almost back in time, from snapshot to snapshot, and you're watching, okay, this person was here, he's talking to these kind of people and he hangs out with them, so that means he's probably, a rigger, and he was, on the sales during this moment in time, but he died here, and
Hmm.
someone called out his name or whatever, because you get in the snapshots in time, you get like kind of voice acting and audio cues as to what was going on in the moments before that snapshot. So sometimes they give you clues where like, oh, they'll just say a name and you can kind of use that to at least lock in one character. But for a lot of the 60 people that you're trying to figure out who they are and what their fates were, you're just working on process of elimination, which is it's really satisfying because once you get three people that are proved to be correct, you can kind of cement those names in, and there's a process in the game which will be like, yeah, these people are right, and then you can use that to kind of whittle down and connect more and more names to faces. It's a
Hmm.
really fun one. It's really cool. The story is engaging. It's a small game, so it doesn't take you that long, but it's a really, really cool one.
Yeah, it's nice. I own this one. I think it's just sitting on my Steam library. It's just like this thing.
I would highly recommend
Yeah,
that
I
one
would like
because
to.
it's a pretty quick one,
Yeah.
and it's not terribly difficult. Um, there are, it feels a little weird when you've maybe gone through all of the moments in time
Mm-hmm.
that there are, and there are still like 30 people that you don't know. And so then you have to kind of go back and analyze everything because there are a ton of clues that are just like hidden in the background of a scene that you would never really think to remember. But it's all there in, the world building that the ship sets up. It's very satisfying, really cool structure, unique. Never really played a game like it. So highly recommend you check that one out in
Mm-hmm.
your library eventually.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I kind of continued in my platforming quest and played Celeste, which,
Mm-hmm.
very celebrated new indie
Mm-hmm.
game. I think it won like an indie game of the year a
Yeah,
while
probably.
ago. It's a good one. It's solid. The controls are fantastic. I was complaining about blasphemous controls. Celeste, the whole game is the controls. Like, the platforming is super satisfying. It's difficult, but it is really nice because each time you die, you just immediately reset at the beginning of the level, and the levels usually aren't too long. Um, I think the story is it's kind of how I feel about Undertale is like this was like a super influential game to some people and they like connected to it on like a deep personal level.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't say it clicked with me in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice story. I thought it was maybe a little too sentimental. But like I get that that really connects with some people. So personally, I think the gameplay is everything in this game. It's really satisfying. One of the better platformers that I've played in this kind of vein of platformers, where it's more like a, Super Meat Boy kind of thing. But great experience. Pretty short, if you're not obviously trying to collect every single collectible or do every nook and cranny in this game, you can complete it very quickly. But it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
Satisfied with
my
it.
my brothers love this game. I think for
Hmm.
the story, it's probably like a formative years type of thing where it's like
Hmm.
if you do it during that period, it's gonna change your
Yeah,
life or
it,
something.
it
And if it's
speaks
outside of
to
that,
a
it's like yeah,
moment.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's a weak story. I just think it's maybe a little derivative because it's like I understand what it's going for, and who it's trying to connect with. It just kind of missed the mark for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say it's a bad game.
Yeah.
After playing Celeste, I had to, you brought up Metal Gear Solid last time, and I was like, well, I'd already downloaded it. I had tried to play it initially and kind of bumped off of it just because it's Metal Gear One is maybe a little jank. But after you brought it up, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna
You
do
gotta
it.
go. You gotta go
And
into
so I played through Metal Gear Solid 1, and I
it.
played through Metal Gear Solid 2, and I played through Metal Gear Solid 3. And I can kind of talk about them all together here because otherwise it'd be way too long. Besides 1, because 1 is a terrible fucking experience. I, briefly talked to you in person about this, but Metal Gear 1 is, because I was playing on PC and because for whatever reason I couldn't get my controller to connect to this game specifically, I had to play it on mouse and keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
which this game made in 1998 for the PlayStation 2 was perhaps not made with a controller or a keyboard and mouse in mind. And so the controllers or the controls for the keyboard are just incredibly jank and unintuitive, which makes this game, which is already dated, slightly jank and unintuitive, even harder to play. I really like obviously the story and the cinematic quality to this narrative. I think Kojima is an incredible, you know, visionary. I don't know how much I love him as like a writer because I do think he gets lost in the sauce a lot over the course of this series. Um, but I think he has an incredible appreciation for movies, and the way he frames this game as a movie is really cool. Like all of the cinematics are really fun and kind of campy and weird, and like it's such an interesting blend in this Metal Gear Solid franchise of, you know, classic super agent kind of military propaganda stuff, like I don't know, like a GI Joe mixed with weird sci-fi, cyberpunk shit like a Ghost in the Shell, or like a Blade Runner mixed with like weird supernatural paranormal elements with all of the weird ass enemy like bosses that you end up going after.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like in turn influenced from like a James Bond kind of spy thriller, and your unique villains that go through every game. It's a really interesting blend of influences into a really unique package. And Kojima's writing is very particular, dated at some moments, but incredibly profound at the next. It is really just strange, kind of mishmash and juxtaposing perspectives, and the weird meta moments in the games
Oh,
where
yeah.
they call you out for playing games, and it's just like, what is happening? These are incredibly unique experiences that are formative for so many people and have influenced games to come for many, many, many years. I can't say I loved Metal Gear Solid 1 just because that that playthrough I had was so incredibly frustrating just because of the jank
Uh-huh.
controls and the unintuitive game design. But I do understand how important it was. And I think 2 and 3, once I got my controller working, were much, much, much more enjoyable to play through. 2 specifically, I really enjoyed the the story and the probably the gameplay the most. I understand a lot of people like 3 the most, and it is really impressive, just the graphical improvements that come with each game, which all of these were
Yeah.
released for the PS2, I think, which is just super impressive that they just got better and better and better. But yeah, what can be said that hasn't already been said about this franchise? There are a million and one video essays delving into a
Sure.
vast amount of secrets and, cultural critiques that Kojima has brought up. Um, I think 2 is maybe my favorite moments of writing from him, but 3 is probably overall a better experience.
As a game.
Yeah. 2 is fun though. I like 2 and 3 probably in equal amount.
Mm-hmm.
I think they balance each other well.
Yeah. I'd like to get to them
But
relatively soon while the first game is still a little bit
yeah,
on my mind. I obviously had a better experience with the control scheme, even though, yeah, some of it is like, oh no, I'm losing Peter for a second. Anyways, as I was saying before, Peter's computer shat itself. I don't know what I was saying. Metal Gear One, it was is jank or some shit. I don't know.
yeah. And
I
you've
don't
been
remember.
meaning to play through 2 and 3
Yeah,
eventually.
exactly.
I kind of jumped the gun on you, but
Yeah, you beat
I
me to it. It
yeah,
started. Yeah.
I do mean to play 4 and 5,
Yeah.
but I understand because it's not really.
Is four
I'll
even
do that at a
on
later.
modern systems? Like five, I think is on
I think
Steam, for
4.
example. I don't know what four is on. I haven't heard much about it.
Yeah, it seems like the odd one out of the series, maybe. Um, but it was on the PS3, so I have to emulate a PS3.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah, that's because that's fair. 'Cause, I mean, if it's not any like thing in the now, then like what the fuck else am I gonna buy a PS3 for that for one game?
Yeah,
In the current year of
Tony would love you to
2025,
do that.
get me out of
Yes.
this. All right, how many more do you got? Yeah, like four or three.
No, just one more.
Oh, okay. Well, goddamn. All right.
I,
I could do mine then, and then you finish it out. Um, this other one that I'm gonna mention now is also from I had mentioned it previously last time. It was Echoes of Wisdom, the new 2D Zelda thing on the Switch.
mm,
I ended up beating it. I'm on the road to 100%ing it, which I'm nearly done with. I just need to get the straggling like random heart pieces and whatnot, like stuff like that. And yeah, I beat it. It's got like A surprising amount of dialogue for a 2D Zelda game, like a little bit more than I'm wanting. It's not like an overwhelming amount, but it's like I don't know. And the story, it's like the whole theming of it really. It feels like a sort of hodgepodge of everything that is Zelda from the 2D and 3D, where like specifically with the enemy types and with the species or races, I don't know, of the like varying groups that appear in the game. Which Zelda is sort of known for that. For like you got the Gorons, the Zoras, the whatever, the Rito and shit. And this game, for the first time in like 2D Zelda history, features stuff like now there's Deku scrubs, which only appear in like the 3D ones. So it's got like this weird thing where it's like putting all these things from various games together in one spot. And you got like Goron City, for example, where the surrounding area around it has hot springs, which was, I think, introduced in Breath of the Wild. I mean, they may have had other stuff like that in like, I don't know, Spirit Tracks or some like random game like that, where they also had hot springs around it. But it's like the same type of hot springs, like Breath of the Wild, or in the Goron City area. And then also within the actual like buildings itself, they have like the same like Goron pot things. I don't really know what they are, like from Ocarina of Time, if you know what I'm talking about. It's just like this giant Goron pot thing. I don't know what the fuck it is. But in Ocarina of Time, you would like throw bombs in it, and it would open a secret door or some shit. And in this, it just exists there. And like the same thing with like the Gerudo area. It feels very reminiscent of Breath of the Wild, and that's where I think most of the inspiration came from. A big part of that is the UI, which I'll get to. But also like the enemy design, like it maybe has the widest, most varying like degrees of like enemies, because again, it's borrowing from like nearly every game in this series. Like not every creature or whatever comes back for this, but it does borrow a good deal from the series. Like for example, there's two types of generic bird enemies in the series. There's in the 2D games, and like A Link to the Past, it was maybe introduced. There's like the crow enemy, and what they do is they sit on trees, and then when you get close to them, they fly up, and then they dive down at you to like attack you. And in the 3D ones, in at least Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, there's the gways, which are like pink birds that just like fly around and they circle above you, and then they sort of do a similar thing where they dive at you when you like walk by them or whatever. And this game features both, and like both of those ideas are reflected, where the crows, they sit up in the trees and they swoop down at you, and the gways are like flying around and they come down at you or whatever. And like the design of the gways are much more like more polygon based, where the like with sharper edges and stuff, because that's how they originally looked in the N64 like iterations of them. And then the crows are a bit more rounded with the like their look from A Link to the Past, whereas it pixel graphics, so they could sort of at that point in time like do more with that creatively. And it's just weird seeing like both of these like that example, like both of them just like exist in this thing. In addition to like all the other races and stuff. Yeah.
Did you think it's a good thing? Because like it's an interesting. Obviously, if you're remaking an old game, like you can either stay 100% faithful to it, or you can, adapt it to modern preferences, or like
this isn't a
modern
remake
design.
though. Like Link's Awakening, that was a remake. But this is like its own fresh new thing that's using the Link's
Oh
Awakening
shit!
system.
Okay.
Yeah, my
Okay.
bad. This is Echoes of Wisdom, which is a whole
Okay.
new
I
thing.
thought it was the one, this is not the Zelda one.
This is Zelda.
Play as Zelda.
Yeah, this is that one.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just not a remake. I just don't know what you would say.
Oh, interesting. I've never played any of the Zelda games. And so when I saw the trailer for this one, I thought it was just another remake because they did do that a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, so there was
One of
Link's
the
Awakening
2.5 ones, yeah.
remake, and this uses the same engine as that, but it's a new, like
Okay.
in theory, more unique experience.
Hmm.
Because it like you are playing as Zelda for like there's technically the whatever stupid CDI game that like you play Zelda. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
There's like that Wanda Gamelon or some shit. Technically, that's a Zelda game where you play Zelda, but most of the other ones, it's like she kind of just exists there. And it's you're playing as Link, and
Hmm.
the play style of it, like I sort of outlined last time, it's really weird where you just kind of you summon dudes to fight other dudes, and you just kind of wait around as like they if hopefully your dude kills the other dude. And I grew more used to this as things went along. um where like I would just summon a dude to like fuck up and kill the surrounding people, like enemies around, and then meanwhile I would go and like I don't know, just cut the grass to see if there are rupees inside, or like do like other various like small activities around that I wouldn't be doing otherwise. So it sort of allows you to like weirdly multitask, like because I mean you could just do whatever. Like you could participate in the fight sort of by you have a thing that could maybe like hold enemies in like a one position and like prevent them from doing things. I didn't really do that though. I kind of just summon dudes and repeatedly summon them because usually when they first spawn, they do like an attack, and then they wait a little bit and then they attack again. But if you like
Mm.
keep summoning them over and
Yeah,
over
your
again,
animation
there's
cancel.
it's just yeah exactly like there's this one dude who like floats around and they like drop bombs from overhead. So I would just like summon them over and over again. It was just the screen would I would bombard them, okay, with bombs like repeatedly, and until there were like I don't know maybe 10 of them on screen or some silly shit like that. Um, and yet the combat's weird, but like my point with bringing up how it's like this hodgepodge of various things from the Zelda series. Like in theory, this should be a very unique experience, but like because of those things and like the layout of Hyrule in general, it feels like more of like a Zelda greatest hits than like having its own sort of unique
Game.
identity thing going on. Because yeah, it has like the Twilight Princess, like the Yeti people or whatever, and just like borrowing from everything without really doing, I feel like, much on its own, which you would expect with Zelda's on the box art. You're finally actually playing as her rather than Link. You would expect that more unique experience, but it isn't really reflected in the world specifically. In gameplay, it sort of is because you're summoning whatever things, and like the overworld, it feels less meticulously thought and planned out. Like Link's Awakening, I think is extremely effective in like the world design. I mean, maybe most people would argue Link to the Past has like the best world design or something. But I think Link's Awakening is very effective with space and like everything from like where it's located on the map to like how exactly big a certain area is. Like to me, it all feels intentional, and I didn't necessarily feel that super strongly with this one because there's just like some areas where it feels like what is the point of this like terrain like type of thing existing for, and like Link's Awakening it felt more like a fully realized like more planned out like tighter type of thing because part of that was they were working with limitations of the system on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Like you only have like so much space and like just arraying like all these tiles in this sort of way. um and yeah, the game lagged on a few occasions. Most people probably know about this. And it's a very common complaint. Like there are some parts where, like, depending on where you're positioned on the map and like how high of elevation you are, also maybe determines it. Uh, it could be running at 60 frames potentially, but a good chunk of the time it was running at 30, sometimes less. Not like 10 or 15, but maybe 20 or so. So yeah, that was annoying. I assume Switch 2, which is maybe I guess it's coming out soon. Like in theory, that would maybe run it better. I don't really know how the Switch 2 is gonna look or work or function or that kind of thing. And yeah, it's just weird because it's like you have the worst part of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdoms like UI thing was scrolling to like out of all the weapons and shit you had, it was like opening that menu and like scrolling all the way one way or the other. It was worse in Tears of the Kingdom because you had like the mechanic where you could combine like materials you find with like various weapons, and it'll make different combinations of like now your sword to shoot flames or whatever because you combine it with this thing. And that menu of opening all of these items that you have is I mean, it's just dozens and dozens and dozens of like random various things that you picked up that are all different and unique, and you have to like scroll through the whole shit. And it's that exact same problem in this one, where it's one row. It's one continuous row of like 100 or however many goddamn many of these things you could summon, and you have to like scroll all the way through them to like find the thing you want, which most of the time doesn't matter because for most situations you could sort of just use like the same couple of things. Like if I'm underwater, I'm going to use the shark every time. If I'm in the overworld and the enemy's on the ground, I'm going to use this person. If they're in the air, I'm going to use this person. Like those types of things. And then for various puzzles, there's definitely some like summoning things that matter or are more important than others. So yeah, just that like, I mean, like I don't know. I think they wanted it to be mapped to one button still because they don't want you to be. But well, because they let you summon like multiple different things, so it's annoying if you like want one thing and then you want another. You can't like map them to two different buttons. You have to open the menu, select the one, summon the one thing, and then to summon the other thing, you have to open the menu again, scroll to it, and then summon it. And if the other one dies, you have to like reopen it again
Do it
and like
again.
keep select.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Yeah.
so silly and dumb. So yeah, that part's annoying, which again is a common complaint. But like, yeah, I feel like the world isn't super unique. It still looks very nice. I wish it could run better. I didn't pay much attention to the music. It probably reuses a decent amount while also it probably has a decent mix of like here's newer versions of like the same songs you've heard or
Hmm.
whatever. They're like the reoccurring melodies, but it's just done in a different way for like some of the like locations that would be reoccurring in the series quite often. And overall, it was a decent experience. It's very 100%able, as I say before I actually 100% it. At least I think it is, because I'm most of the way through that. I probably won't have like any updates by next time, even though it's only like another day or two of stuff I have to do. I feel like so.
You've basically
I've pretty
completed the
much
game
yeah,
already.
I've done through this shit already. It does this dumb thing where it kind of it there are parts in some games where it feels like it's punishing me for exploring certain areas early, where I'm like it's sort of an open world or open zone type thing. I like go to one area and I just like do a thing there. I find a thing. I'm like, oh cool, that's nice or whatever. And then I later progress through the story, and then the side thing opens up, and it's like, hey, there's a thing in this area. Go do it. And then I have to go all the way back there and potentially back through this dungeon type of thing just to get
Oh,
to the end
okay. You
again.
have to backtrack.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like a small things in this because like the a lot of the smaller like they're small in the overworld. If you're just going to like a random cave or something, it's like 3 rooms or whatever. But it's like I feel like I'm being punished. Like I already did this shit. Like just there's just for most of those things, I feel like you should just let me if I go to there before accepting the quest, just like give me the thing that happens at the end of it there, and then I could go to the person in whatever town and be like, oh, I already did this thing, or I already have this item because I already went there, rather than I already went there and now I'm talking to this person to telling me to go there, and then I go there and then I go back again to the person. It's like to me stuff like that bothers me. And this is certainly not the only video game to ever do that. I just wish stuff was like better in that regard and like more. I don't know if it's like necessarily more thought out. It just bothers me when I'm like
Hmm.
I want to freely. The game should, in theory, reward me for going out of my way to do various things through just like whatever I come across, and this sort of feels like backwards a little bit. So yeah, that's how that's how I feel about it. Overall, a good experience. If that wasn't clear, it probably wasn't because I'm mostly complaining.
Complaining.
But that's I don't know. That's just how for me it is. It's like I don't know. The good stuff is more obvious for
Yeah,
this
you
one.
love these
It looks
games,
nice.
and
It
you've
plays
spoken about your
well.
love for
It's
them.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
nice and it's pretty easy for the most part. There's like a couple times I had to look up specific things, but for the most part, it's very doable, and it's quite nice. So yeah.
Cool. Maybe eventually, when I play through all of the Legend of
Mm.
Zelda games, I'll end up checking this
All
one out.
20 of the mainline ones in a row.
Yeah,
Started the
yeah,
first one, the
easy.
new Zelda 2.
Yeah,
Started at the bottom.
simple. Um, the game I'm currently playing is Rain World. I'm not sure if you've heard of that game.
Rain World.
It's yeah. It's a essentially it's an immersive sim where you are just
Is
a
it also an
little.
indie game?
Yes, it is essentially. I've seen this game recommended a bunch of places because of the way they simulate the world and the ecosystem. Essentially, you are a single little slug cat, and
Mm-hmm.
you are basically bottom of the food chain. And so the story is very loosely set up where you are washed away from your family in these intense rainstorms that surround the world. And so whenever the rains hit, you likely die. This kind of gameplay loop of this game is you are exploring a massive world much larger than you ever were, trying to avoid a vast amount of unique predators that wander the world regardless of your actions. All of the AI kind of is coded to, you know, do their own thing. They have their own preferences, their own personalities, in quotes, where they have different behaviors that they will kind of act upon in very unique ways. And you are just meant to explore, try and progress. There's this weird kind of observer creature that follows you and loosely guides you to some extent, but for the most part, you're just left to wander a very large world, explore as much as you can, gather as much food as you can before the rains hit. Because
Mm-hmm.
when the rains hit, you die. It's game over unless you make it to shelters. And there
Oh,
are
okay.
various shelters kind of dotted throughout the map, but there are other regions that you have to get to. And in order to get to those regions, you have to pass these gates. And so essentially, you are exploring the region you're in, finding out gates to other regions, and then progressing as much as you can. It's a very strange playing experience. It's really cool because it obviously immerses you in the fact that you are pretty helpless. You can kind of carry tools and you can climb around, and there are spears that you can pick up and kind of use to kill predators that are attacking you. The first, but for the most part, combat is not worth it. The creatures that you're going to be coming up against are much larger than you, have much more health, and will kill you in one shot. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very unforgiving. It's a very difficult game. It's brutal and unfair at times, just because you'll pop into the next room and immediately there's a lizard there that will eat your head off, and then you just start over, do it again, and it's meant to immerse you in that idea of you are prey, you are nothing, and this world will run without you, and it has before and will always. So it's cool in that way. Um, I really like the world where essentially you are exploring the ruins of some massive city, some type of mechanical structure that seems to go on forever, which is a nice kind of. Obviously, I said I love that in Souls-like games where the world is a ruined world that is close to dying, but the cycles of life and the ecosystem that will replace what was lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's all cycles of nirvana and all of that. It's themes in this kind of game that are explored in really interesting ways. It's a cool one. I would recommend if you're willing to put up with a lot of frustration, a lot of difficulty, just because of the
Okay.
random nature of the game. It is all simulated, which is cool, but it can also really hurt at
Yeah, weird.
moments. Um, I'm not. I don't know if I'm even close to being done. The game really does not hold your hand at all. You're dropped in. They kind of explore and tell you what the controls are, but other than that, you make your own fun. It's not like a Minecraft kind of simulation where you can do anything, but it's much more of a explore and uncover aspects of the world that you can kind of put together in order to create a wider picture of what happened, where you're going. Um, it's very engaging in that aspect.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of this.
I popped up for me because
Mm-hmm.
it's a very popular one to make YouTube video essays
Oh yeah,
about.
sure. Indie
So
title
that's for the first one. Yeah,
with a
how
nice
I
art
first got
style or
introduced
something.
to it.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool.
But that took me to the end of my video game marathon for this month at least.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to music recommendations. There still hasn't been a ton come out recently, but I can speak briefly about the ones that have. Um, Bad Bunny dropped a new album. Debí
Mm-hmm.
tirar más fotos. You know, he's a maybe the most famous Latin artist at this point, and
Yeah.
this is by far my favorite album of his. I think he does a good job of balancing his, more classic reggaeton uh, style with a lot of more rustic and authentic Puerto Rican music, which is really cool. Um, I think it's a lot more authentic, and the live instrumentations and the bands and the features that he pulls out are much more enjoyable in this than any other project he's released. I'm very pleased with. It's my favorite album of the year so far, which I know isn't saying much considering it's the first of the year, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a cool one. Ethel Cain also dropped what is technically considered a EP, but it is an hour and a half long. The title of the project is called Perverts. It's a bit of a departure from what she's been normally making. This one is essentially dark ambient drone music with very little, of her classic kind of synth pop, jangle pop, formal music, I guess. So I will be interested to see how much her fans appreciate her, because with Preacher's Daughter, which was her first album, kind of created a lane for herself in the alt pop kind of slow car dream pop lane.
Mm-hmm.
And this new project, Perverts, is very much removed from that. Although there were elements on Preacher's Daughter that, seem to portray an interest in this direction. So I'm not completely surprised she made this switch up, and I'm pleased with it. I think it's a good project, but I am wondering how else will like it. In other news, Mac Miller, uh, his second posthumous album has released, Balloonerism. It's very good. It's technically leftovers of a project that he was working on back around his Faces era. And I remember listening to it a couple years ago just because it was leaked and I was in a Mac Miller
Oh,
mood.
really?
I do really like this one. It's maybe his most abstract and strange, maybe outside of Faces, but it really kind of proved how much of an artist he was, and it is a shame that we lost him so young because he was someone with a lot to say and a great vision and a great artistic exploration of these lunars, and another great project from him. FKA Twigs dropped her new album, Asexual. All of the singles that had been leading up to it were bangers, and the album itself is also very, very good. It's pretty short, which I kind of am left wanting more. She goes in more of a electronic direction on this one than she normally does, but it still has that blend of alt pop and R&B influences. But with this new album, obviously it's all filtered through a bit of a club-oriented electronic lens, which I thought was super catchy. Great production from Corliss. It worked really well for her. And then finally, The Weeknd just dropped his possibly last project as The Weeknd, Hurry Up Tomorrow, which was the final album in the trilogy of Faith, Dawn FM, and now Hurry Up Tomorrow. It's a good one. I think if you liked either, I would compare it to Dawn FM most closely, going more in depth with his kind of synth pop roots, but also, exploring other influences such as Brazilian funk, which is really cool. I think it's a little long, but it's still got bangers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited to see whatever Abel does next. Now that rumor has it is dropping from using the Weekend project, so
What does that
excited to
even
see
mean?
what he
He's
does
just gonna
next.
go by a different musical artist name?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It would be a separate catalog on like Spotify or something like that.
Yeah, a
But
different artist
it's
technically.
just him, and it's just doing the same similar music things.
Who knows? Music artists are weird. They
Yeah,
do that. I
a
mean,
little
I've
pretentious.
spoken on the microphones who became Mount Erie. It
Oh,
was all actually Phil Elverum, but technically they're all different projects and they serve different elements of exploration for the artist in question. So
sounds
I'm
pretentious to
a little
me.
more. It is pretentious, but it is just
Sure.
also a marketing thing,
Oh yeah,
and
totally. It's like I'm
I
rebranding
understand it
myself. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. So take it or leave it. Um,
Makes
but
sense.
that's about all that I have to catch up on
Oh, okay.
music wise.
I got nothing. I get zip. I may have listened to like 3 songs. 2 of them are from movies. Just hearing them in movies. Actually,
Have you read anything
probably all the
though?
songs that I've listened to in the past
Yeah.
are from movies or games that I've been doing well,
Soundtrack
that I've
and all
heard
that.
while doing them. So yeah, I don't have much.
You been reading anything?
I have 3 things. You're not gonna be a fan of any of them.
Oh,
What you
okay.
like one of them? I'm just saying that none of them are the one. The
Yeah,
Brandon
take your
Sandy.
time going through that.
He's out of here. I'm done with
Hmm.
him. I'm joking. I'll go back to this shit eventually. Have you read anything? I have 3.
I have 3 things too.
Oh really? Oh okay. Well, I can start us off with a thing we were talking about last week, One Punch Man. I ended up catching up with it. I did not read the web comic, if that was at all ahead of where the manga is currently. I'm not sure.
Yes, it is. I recognize that last episode. I think I said it wasn't, but last I heard, I guess he is dropping new stuff. So
Weird.
who knows? I'm not reading it.
I don't know either. I'm just gonna keep reading the manga. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you.
I am curious about the web comic in like in a just a general sense of like how
Hmm.
different it is,
It
because
is.
like
Yeah.
the I mean we were sort of saying last time like the art is so integral, especially for the fighting scenes.
Hmm.
Um, and like by the time, like when we last spoke about this, I was at the point where we were just beginning that like pretty big arc that makes up a good bulk
The long one.
of this manga. It's
Yeah.
like over 100 chapters. It's probably like 150 chapters at least. It's like most of
Yeah. The
the manga
Monster
so far
Society arc.
is
Or
this thing,
yeah.
yeah. And it was right before that like it really got to a lot of the really great fights. Because it immediately after the point where we left off, there's this like 6v1, and it's extremely well handled.
Mm.
Where it has a very strong balance of this character is doing something now. It's this character, and these 2 dudes are doing something similar at the same time against like the one dude they're fighting. And like half of them are just being introduced in that like in this very fight scene. Like some of them we sort of know a little bit about, um, like at some point before of like some other fight they were involved in. But like 3 out of the 6 I think are like just fully new to this fight right here introduced, and they do a really good job with just introducing them. Here's who they are. Here's what they look like. Here's their gimmick of how they fight, and then now they're fighting and doing it. That fight was awesome, and it just gets better and better
Yeah.
as it goes along. Like I was really surprised with especially the side characters, because again, like whenever it's focused on Saitama, the One Punch Man, the best parts are that, and most of the story is not on him, but they do get better with just the other side characters and their fights, and a lot of them are really great in this arc, and I guess even beyond it in more recent stuff. I forget exactly what the most recent development that was happening was. It was some interdimensional shit. I don't know.
Hmm.
They're just we're just going everywhere. We're doing everything. Just fuck it. But yeah, it's really cool. And I guess also another commendable aspect of it, which I shouldn't. It should just be the norm. I shouldn't have to like applaud it for doing this. But it's like there's like no anime bullshit really. There's no like weird stupid pervert characters being horny over like
Hmm.
some female
Yeah.
character. Like there's female characters who are designed in like a very like out
Yeah.
there
Because of the art style.
sort of
Obviously,
idealized
Murata
sort of way.
loves
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he loves that.
he loves them, especially Fubuki, who gets
Hmm.
translated as Blizzard. That's just her name. She's in like half the cover pages just because he's like, I mean, he loves
He's a
her,
big
and
fan.
hey,
He's a
so do
big
I. I mean, I can't complain. And
But
but
yeah, there's
like
no like tropey super, or there's no super tropey
no,
elements.
yeah, and
It's
like
a
and, like
lot more
the
of a
yeah
subversion of those things.
the female characters are, some of them are drawn like in a very idealized way, but there's nothing like super like that like pisses me off about them. Like there's nothing that like the characters, like the way they interact with the, like those female
Yeah.
characters. There's nothing like stupid about that stuff involving them. And it also goes both ways because a lot of the men are super idealized also, in terms of like muscular or just like utter twinks, or like you get everything, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
Murata just likes drawing aestheticized human beings,
yeah, he's
which
got a
I
great
think
art
works
style.
well in this kind of superhero society.
That's true. Yeah, because I mean that's what they are. They're superheroes or villains, and they're gonna be these idealized random things. And every once in a while, you get a fat dude or something because it's like just to be different, I guess. Um, but yeah, like super solid. Like I was surprised by how like how much it improves the, especially the side character thing, because that was like my main, I don't know, I guess it was a complaint or just the thing I was
Mhm.
least invested in, but they
You
do
get
find
pulled
ways
out
of
of
making
it.
it
Yeah.
better and more interesting. And now we're focusing in on like we had like the big monster whatever society fight, and then now we're sort of doing like this person, like humans against each other type of thing. It sort of reminds me of Attack on Titan, where you have like different arcs about like, here's now we're fighting the Titans, and here now here's some humans being not so nice type of thing. Um, it gets similar vibes, I guess, off of just, I don't know, those ideas. But it's like everything is like pretty well handled in this. And yeah, I really like it. It's very nice.
Yeah. It's a good manga,
Yeah, yeah.
and also has solid anime too.
Mm-hmm.
On my end, for my book club, we read a few short stories from the author Daphne du Maurier, which you may not know the name, but you likely know some of the short stories. That being The Birds, which was adapted by Alfred Hitchcock,
Oh yeah.
and a few other of her short stories. And it's an interesting kind of take on what would probably be the horror genre. They're like kind of horror slash thriller short stories. They're all like really quick to get through, but they have a very specific kind of general malaise surrounding her writing and the kind of tension that she builds up through her stories is very kind of overwhelming and really colors the whole text as a whole. Um, I did really enjoy her short stories. It, she kind of blends this weird element of like social awkwardness slash isolationist element of horror, where it'll be like, oh, this really weird thing happened to me, but no one else is experiencing it or will acknowledge it, and so you're left sitting with that sense of unease,
Mm-hmm.
where the rest of the world or the people around you will not reciprocate your feelings, and so it just kind of leaves you in that weird, awkward position. And there's not a ton to say about each story because they're very kind of, as I said, short and concise, which I really liked. But it's a really interesting feeling that if you're at all interested in kind of horror or tension, I think she does a really good job of writing them.
Which one specifically did you read from her?
So
Or did you read a
I read
bunch?
I read a bunch. It is a weird kind of problem where she has different collections of short
Oh
stories
yeah. Yeah.
named the same thing.
Okay.
So technically, I started reading the Don't Look Now collection, but I realized that the book that I should be reading for book club was a different collection
Uh,
of short stories, also called Don't Look Now. So I read a mixture of the ones in one version of the Don't Look Now,
okay.
and then I also read uh, parts of the Birds collection of short stories.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I would recommend it. She does a cool job of kind of writing short stories. I don't read a ton of short stories, but when I do, I always enjoy them. I know there's Stories of Your Life by, can't remember his name, but that author and that short story is what was adapted to become Arrival from Denis Villeneuve.
Oh, okay.
And he does, short stories are nice because you don't have to invest as much time in them.
Yeah.
But obviously, you lose some of the depth from a full novel.
Mm-hmm.
But in the best kinds of short stories, you don't really
It's
miss
not
them
needed.
as much because you're sitting in a very specifically crafted kind of mood or mindset that the author wants to explore in a very kind of unique way, which I like.
Yeah, cool. I feel like I've heard of My Cousin Rachel and Rebecca. I don't know at what point,
She's
but
been, yeah, I heard
yeah,
a lot of
it's
her
just in
stuff
the
has been
canon, sort of.
adapted into short stories
Hmm.
or adapted into films. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have come across one of those variously in Letterboxd. I don't know. Obviously, the birds
Yeah.
I've heard of from Hitchcock. I don't. I
Yeah,
haven't seen
Hitchcock
that
also
though.
did Rebecca. I think he's just a fan of her writing.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, might read those at some point if reading is a thing on my mind. Yeah, I just have manga. So this next one, on some of these manga websites, they have like a random button.
Hmm.
Have you ever fucked with
You
that?
did. No, I've never used it.
I was like,
Is
I
this what
finished
it's
One
about
Punch
to?
Man. I'm like, I have all these other mangas I could be reading that are on my
Oh,
list, but I'm also just kind of like,
but
whatever. I'll
dude,
fuck around with this for a little bit.
yeah,
So I keep clicking
you'll
around.
unlock it.
I start reading one that's some sort of like weird, I don't know the name of it. It's some weird like ecchi sort of vampire thing where just
Okay.
it's like
Hmm.
some dude and he's like being, I don't even know. It was weird as shit. I just kind of scrolled through it quickly just to like see what was happening. Weird shit that some of these Japanese authors make. Anyways, this one I read is, I guess, slightly weird, but not in like a super bad way. It's called Guen Saga. I don't know if you've heard of it. I feel like I maybe have heard of it at some point before. Doing like coming across it. Um, there's two different mangas of Guen Saga because they're both adaptations of this very long running novel series or light novel series from Japan that has like, I don't know, like 200 something volumes. And there's two different adaptations of it. One of them is from like it adapts like the beginning arcs of it, and I think it just sort of serves to uh, do the beginning of it, and then if you finish them and you like the story, then you go like buy the light novels or whatever, because the manga isn't like gonna. I don't think the intention of it was to ever fully adapt the entire like all fucking 200 volumes of the light novel. And then there's another one which is an adaptation of some random thing that happens way off in the future. I read the first one, which I don't know if I actually read all of it because on the website I was doing there was just three of them. But for on Wikipedia and like other shits, they say that there's 6 volumes in total, like on my anime list. So if that's the case, I only read the first three, and it's just kind of weird. It's about this. There's like these twin royal siblings, and their parents die, and they are like fleeing the country that is being overthrown. It's like a dark fantasy thing. It reminds me a lot of Berserk because it's got like this big dude in a black cape going around cutting people up with swords and being just a really strong dude, and like this sort of dark fantasy setting thing, with like weird, sort of messed up characters and I guess themes being explored slightly. Um, and yeah, because these twins come across just in the woods as they're running away. They come across this dude Guen, who's just this dude with a leopard. They call it a mask because it's just like he was magically attached a leopard mask or whatever to his head. It basically just looks like he has a leopard head in a man's body, but he could talk and shit. It's really weird. I don't really understand it. And the manga, most of it just takes place in this castle where they get like locked up from, and there's this sort of weird villain dude who wears like a mask and he emits some sort of weird poison miasma thing when he takes it off. I don't really know what was happening. And the castle gets invaded by monkeys. I understood it even less during that. It's just some monkey army is invading the castle and they're trying to escape from it. Just kind of a weird thing overall. I guess if I've only read half of it, I maybe want to sort of just finish it just to say that I have. So I'd have to double check on that. And yeah, I can't remember why I settled on this. It just had the most, I guess, unique like look of the poster of like just whatever was on the site for like the first volume,
Yeah.
in terms of like, because its art style is quite unique for manga standards. Like it doesn't really have an anime aesthetic at all. Like it's even it's more Western, or like, because Berserk is uh, fairly unique. But even that I still feel like is more anime influenced, and this one it feels a step away from that. Or like I don't know if I would call it more Western, or just like, I don't know. It's more different, I guess. Um, but yeah, it's just comparable to that because of the things I said earlier, and just, I mean, dark fantasy manga. It's like a Berserk. It's not really, but it's got some
At least
things in
intriguing
common.
enough to keep you reading.
Yeah, like a little bit. Like I wouldn't. I don't know if I would even call it good. It's just kind of weird, and it feels like
Okay.
poorly paced and like stuff like that. And the writing isn't especially great. The art's quite nice, honestly, and the artwork is really good with lighting, and specifically the lack of it at certain points. It creates like a really good like using your imagination to fill in the blanks type of thing. Like it's actually really quite strong in that way. And there's a lot of good, just like there's a bunch of monkeys running in the castle swinging swords and shit, and they're cutting up dudes. And it's like the scale of it is really nice, and like the castle shots. I guess I shouldn't call them shots because it's not fucking, they're not filming it. But the pictures, the images of like the castle and the architecture, like all of that is really well done. I'd probably say that's the best and most consistent aspect of it. The actual characters and story, I'm not terribly invested in. It seems okay, and I would, I guess, check out the remainder of this. I've yet to, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll do that at
Maybe.
some point if I haven't, because maybe what I read was like there were three of them, but they counted as double volumes somehow. I don't think so though. I don't think that's a thing. So yeah. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing I happened upon
Yeah,
for
you
like,
just
I
wanted
think it took
to
me, I think it
roll
took
the
me one
die.
night, or maybe 2 nights. I just spent one going through it. I'm like, yeah, this is, so I'm experiencing something so unique with the pirating website randomizer thing. I don't know if I would.
Going a place
It
no one
seems like a
else
fun little
gone
thing to do,
before.
like a fun little experiment. And
Hmm.
this is what I got out of it. And not many people I know can say that they've read Guen Saga. I don't
No.
know a single
So
person who's read this
if you
shit.
ever, fishing to spice things up, I guess, in
Yeah,
your
why not?
manga
If you're super
consumption.
bored, it's like a fun idea. It's like a gotcha system. Like a, ooh,
Hmm.
what will I get today? I got to keep re-rolling, type of thing.
No, it's a cool concept. Maybe I'll do
And
that.
it's all free. You don't
Um,
have to pay. You don't have to pay money for
that is
the free
true.
rolls.
That is true.
Yeah.
And I can't do that right now though, because on
Mm.
my end, I have been kind of fiending to get back into reading comics.
Oh, really?
So, like Western comics.
Right.
Because I've been hearing a lot about DC Comics and where they're at currently. Because they're doing this interesting run called, I don't even know what it's called, but essentially there are 3 runs of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman
Mm-hmm.
under the Absolute banner. So we have Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, and Absolute Wonder Woman, where it's an alternate universe, as in many comics do, they're elsewheres or whatever. But in these ones, you have 4 characters of, the Justice League and the DCU, but stripped of all the characteristics that you know them as. So Batman, no longer rich. His parents are a teacher and a social worker.
And they
They still
live.
die,
Oh.
but they still.
Okay.
One of them is alive,
Oh, interesting.
and Alfred. He's not a butler. They don't have a butler,
He's
and
just their neighbor or
the
something.
yeah. Well, no, they do a lot of interesting things with
Okay.
the established canon of Batman, and then take away aspects that make him who he is,
Okay.
but deconstruct him in that way in order to rebuild him as the same character that he is in all of them. Like it's a really cool kind of idea where for all of these, it's not just Batman. For Superman, you know, they do more regarding the backstory of Krypton and where there is essentially like a classist struggle where Kal-El Superman is born to like essentially a worker caste, and his family is kind of like born into servitude to what is a science elite or whatever, and they're people who are using science to further production and everything, and that eventually leads to Krypton's demise. And then with Wonder Woman, she's no longer an Amazon, but she was instead raised in hell under the tutelage of Circe. And so it's just like interesting diversions from the core ideas that make these characters who they are, but they end up at the same place of being heroes. And I really like that. The writing has been really good throughout all of them. There's only like 4 issues per one of these, because the strange thing about Western comics is they come out monthly instead of weekly, because obviously the color and ink and everything, they're usually longer
chapters
as well.
Yeah, the issues are longer than the average manga chapter.
It is very interesting. I don't know how much you've ever gotten into Western comics.
Only slightly.
I read a ton in high school, and it is hard to get into just because of how
it's very overwhelming. Regimented. It's extremely overwhelming.
The arcs and like which ones you should read, which ones you don't read, which ones are important to read for other arcs. It's really terrible, and there is no really good way of doing it.
Yeah,
I found like I did the research back in high school, and I'm like, you know what, you just gotta jump into it somewhere.
Yeah,
and the appealing things about not reboots, but kind of I guess alternate universe stories like these Absolute Comics are, you're starting from square one, so you don't have to have all of the necessary requisite information that you might need for other comic arcs. So that's why I would say I would recommend these Absolute Comics, just because there's not many of them so far, and they're really cool, and they do something unique with comics that a lot of DC and Marvel comics do get really repetitive, because they're forced into writing for these characters that really can't change. They are the archetypal characters that they were at the beginning, and they go through various kind of story arcs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you can't mess with the canon of these characters like you can with a unique character.
Yeah.
You have to instead do that in a separate universe. So it's nice to engage with these separate universe stories every so often, just to get something unique out of characters that you like but are maybe tired of. So it's cool, and these Absolute Comics kind of got me back into reading comics now.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I just looked up Absolute Batman. He's just like wielding a battle axe or something. So it kind of goes hard.
Yeah,
he's spiked up.
He's not a millionaire, so instead he's an engineer, and so he invents most of his tech, but with like rudimentary stuff. So like his Batmobile is like a fucking dump truck that he stole off the lot, because he works as he worked in like the sewage treatment. He worked as like an engineer. He worked like under like the systems in place in Gotham, and was able to kind of familiarize himself with the city in such a way that he can use his lack of resources and kind of get around that. So it's really cool what they do with these characters that but you get to have them in different circumstances that make it a lot more engaging to read.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Like honestly, I might check these out, because I mean, I don't know. I like AUs. I feel like that's not a very
a lot of them
unpopular take.
It's kind of hit or miss a lot of the time.
Sure.
But when you do get a cool one, then it strikes something special.
Yeah, it seems nice. And it's, cause I mean, comics, I've read a little bit of Batman, the new 52 shits from like a decade ago or so. I've read like some of those Batman ones, and then I've read a couple of the Nightwing ones also, I think, for that also. And I just stopped at some point. Like I was reading those in college, and I think more recently I tried to do the X-Men shits. and those
Yeah,
are
I've
like
heard that's
all over the
good.
place. And
But yeah, it's hard.
I tried starting on like X-Men Giants or something, but like there's like I think there's multiple X-Men series called Giants, or that like have that as a subtitle.
That happens a lot.
I
There are
know.
multiple DC ones that are labeled absolute, but you kind of have to go off of the year they're
Yeah, the
released,
year.
which is a bit of a pain.
Yeah, it seems silly because that's the thing, the Western versus the Japanese manga is like
Hmm.
just making up their own stories, doing whatever, and then in the West, it's like, yeah, we have to reuse these superheroes for the 50th time, and it's like, what other way do you make it unique than, I mean, this alternate universe thing? Even though by the end, I mean, like you're saying, they are superheroes still, but they're, I mean, I don't know,
Yeah,
different enough by
they
setup.
fulfill the same archetype,
Hmm.
but they are, different enough characters that it feels like it's fresh, which is, all I'm really asking for at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, it seems cool. I might check those out. I always want to go back to those at some point. Either
Hmm.
probably X-Men. I would try again, just wherever I left off at. I don't really remember.
X-Men usually has the strongest roster of.
It seems cool.
What else did you read?
Oh yeah. So I don't know. I have like all of these mangas and shit like on my reading list, and I'm like, I gotta hit these. That's at some point or whatever.
Can't just
And
roll the
I'm
die
just like,
again.
or I could check out the most middest thing of the century, that being Black Clover, which is it's another shonen action
Yeah,
manga thing, and it is
yeah,
maybe like the tropiest goddamn thing I've ever read. I don't know if you've read it or you just kind of
yeah,
vaguely know about
yeah.
it. Have
No,
you read
I've
it?
read it. Yeah.
You have.
But you said Black Clover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I read it.
Oh, really?
Um,
How long ago?
I read it maybe 2 years ago now,
Okay.
and I haven't really been keeping up
Okay.
because you get to the point in Black Clover where you feel like, oh, this would be a good stopping point. It feels like we've reached a conclusion, character arcs, and then it's a shonen
It
battle
just keeps
manga.
going
So we just
for
keep
the
going.
money.
We just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Interesting.
it just wore out its welcome for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of engaging because like you get your cool moments with your
Oh,
characters that you
totally.
grow to
Yeah, it
like.
gives you that
It's like
shonen
it
shit.
scratches that itch. Well, yeah, but obviously I would
Is it
never say
worth it
it's
in the
doing
end?
anything.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like it's just the tropey shit where it's like, again, we're with the protagonist who sucks, and then all of a sudden they get this cool power that's powered
Oh, it's
by
dark.
Satan probably, or it's like
It's so
edgy.
cool. It's
Yeah. And
anti-magic. Whoa.
he's the most shonen protagonist of shonen protagonists. I want to be
Hmm.
the Hokage Pirate King, dude.
Yep, yep,
I
yep,
want to be
yep.
the greatest that there ever was and catch them all or whatever. Um, and like his power is just like so OP, and like the by the time it gets introduced, I'm like, okay, that's just the ender of all things, because he's in this magical society. Is like the setting or whatever. I watched like the anime for it at first, like a couple years ago, or like
And
when I was in high
mhm.
school. That's not a couple years ago anymore, Peter. Um, I watched a little bit of it in high school because I think of some of our mutual friends at the time were checking that out, and I watched like the first dozen or so episodes, and then I just stopped with like, oh yeah, I'll go back to that eventually. But I'm reading it now, and the art is quite nice, and I like the styling, the outfits, I guess, of the characters, and I like the visual setting that it puts on, and yeah, in this magical system where everybody just uses magic. Pretty much everybody's got it. There's the protagonist Asta. He ain't got shit, but his power is he cancels magic by swinging swords at people, which I kind of like the idea that his power is he summons swords and he fights that because he's been uh, ambitiously training to become the Hokage Wizard King dude. And he's been doing so with physical training. So compared to other magical people in universe, he's a little bit more agile, stronger, like that such of things. Because nobody's really like working out like their muscles, because that's not what's going on in world. Which I think is that what also what is it,
Mashal.
Mashal? Yeah, I was gonna
Yep,
say, like,
there's
isn't that the same
yeah,
thing that does? Which that came out
yeah.
after Black Clover, right?
And Mashal takes like the tropes that Black Clover plays incredibly straight and subverts it because it's a gag manga.
Hmm.
That makes it maybe a little more tolerable when you
Right.
get these kind of tropes and you get your quirky subversion. Whereas Black Clover,
It's just the tropes.
it's just straight up, what you are reading is what you're getting, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's for better for
we
worse.
were commending
It's
the One Punch Man for having no shitty, stupid anime moments. This one does. It's not the worst I've seen, and again, it's a manga, so it's like,
mhm.
for the most part, if they do occur, you could quickly go past it. Versus like if I'm sitting down watching an anime and I have to like suffer with it more for like 10 more seconds or something. Versus like the manga where it's like, okay, that thing just happened. Anyways, I'm continuing with my eyes and my brain down through the pages or whatever. Um, and yet, like the like to me, if you have this whole entire world, if you like, if people use magic and the magic is how people fight and shit, it's like you should probably have a at least like somewhat realized like system, of like what even this shit is, how it works differently for different people, because that's like not so far. I'm about, I don't know how far I am. I'm still somewhat early on. I'm probably like a third of the way through, maybe almost. Um, And like so far, there's like no establishment of like here's like any of that, for like the power system, which for me for the most part I'm not. I usually don't care about it too much, but it sort of bothers me in this.
It's incredibly loose.
It's
Like
yeah, it's
you
very
can kind of
vague, and it's
just get
kind of just
away
like
with.
whatever
It's
the
very
author
soft, yeah.
feels like it's gonna be that for this moment
It's
type of
about
thing.
as like shonen as you can get, where it's just like
But it annoys me.
we're uh, yeah, because like a lot of shonens try and have more of like a rigid kind of hard system with like I don't know nen or
Hunter x
whatever.
Hunter probably has the
Uh,
best version
yeah,
of
without
it,
a doubt.
which I mean, there's different like versions of it. Where I mean, something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's like the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure actually has both types, because at first there's Hamon, which is sort of
Right.
like this trained thing that like gets passed on from master to student
Mm.
or whatever that you could learn. And then for part three and onward, you have stands, which are unique to each person. And I like that sort of thing. And then there's other ones like I guess Naruto is an example where it's like people born in these locations will learn this one or whatever, like this type of ninjutsu, which can be applied in these sort of different ways. And Hunter x Hunter probably, I don't know, maybe sort of has the best one, or at least one of the better ones, where it has that defined. Here are
Hmm.
these five types of nen users that I think when you're born, you just like are like
You
in
are,
you
yeah.
just are that thing. And then from that, there's more unique things that can be applied, like in addition to that.
Yeah.
So the like the categories like form a basis of like here's what type of fighter they sort of are, and then the individual characters are able to like express their own powers uniquely, like away from other people within the same category of it. And like these things are fun and they're nice to think about, and it's like, oh my god, who would I be in this universe, and like how would people, whatever, function in this sort of thing. And like Black Clover, it's literally just like whatever goes, man. It's just this person uses it feels like different flavors to attacks rather than like actual meaningful shit that's happening for like I mean, because I want to say like, oh, there's no strategy in the fights, which is true, but also it feels sort of stupid to complain about that, because it's like people don't care about it or want that or whatever. I don't know.
More about
Like,
that
do I like?
narrative
Am I
route
weird
than
for
it is
complaining
about like
about
the
that? Like,
system.
should I be looking for that and hoping for that to be a thing that happens, or should I just accept that it's going to be absent of that, and I should just be okay with it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'll turn your brain off when you're reading.
That's
You're
it.
like, no, I ain't never
Shut up!
heard this.
Don't ever tell me to do that
Don't
shit.
say that. Don't say that.
That's my trigger phrase. There was also this part in the manga where, like, in the after note, he or like one of the chapters, there's like this note from this fan of his who's like an idol, and she like writes this nice message or whatever about like how much she likes the manga or whatever so far. And at the end of the volume, the author like explains, and it's like, oh, it's super cool that this idol person liked my thing. That's really nice of them that they made this letter that you probably hopefully read in the previous chapter or two. And then 2 volumes later, he introduces this character who was an idol and looks a little bit like her. And it just feels weird to me. Like if I was a person of moderate fame and I wrote a nice letter to a person who I was a fan of, and they liked it, and they a couple months, like a year or less later, I find out that they have a character in that story that looks a little bit like me and has the same job occupation as myself, I would feel a little bit weirded out. In all honesty, I'd be like, "What the fuck is?
It's a little
What the fuck is this
flattering,
shit?"
but it
You
would be
could call
weird to do that
flattering is the
without
best thing you could
any.
call it, because I mean, behind the scenes, I don't know. I mean, if it's just
Yeah.
weird or if it's just if it is flattering and they are cool with that, to me it felt weird, and I was like, "What is this shit? What am I? What are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, it felt like I
Don't be
made a
weird,
thing on the
man.
spot
Don't
because
be
of recent
weird.
events, and it's like, "Oh, this
Yeah,
idol
we
person
shouldn't.
likes me. I need to appeal to them now. I need to put an idol in my story that's fucking like, what are you doing? Just like, I don't know. It feels weird to me, and it feels weird that that is like that this story is like someone's passion in making, because it feels like not like disingenuous. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like a billion other things, I guess, and it's not very unique. Again, I sort of like the visual side of things or whatever, and there's occasional whatever moments in the story that I'm like, yeah, okay, that was nice, I guess, the type of thing. But I'm not like super invested in it. I don't know if you like it that much more than me or the
No,
same,
no,
or yeah.
definitely not. Yeah,
Okay, I'm not hurting
it's
your
very
feelings.
by the books. It's. I'd probably put it at the lower end of what I would put like categorize as like mid shonens,
Yeah,
where
it's hard for me to call it
but
bad though, still, because
yeah,
it's like the art's
it reminds
nice
me
and
of like a
it's
My Hero kind of
sufficeable.
thing.
Yeah, I think My Hero is better than this
I agree.
slightly.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Midoriya got his ass. Though I haven't finished that. Also, I've only just watched the first 3 or 4 seasons of it, of the anime. I might go and read the manga. Like, I started doing that, and I was just like, "Fuck this! I don't want to do this
Yeah,
anymore."
it. I've read it all, and you could just wait for the anime to finish up. It
I'm not caught
probably
up with
won't
the
take
anime
more
though.
than like.
I think I'll just
Yeah, I
read
know.
the manga to make it go faster or something. Like, if I had to do one or the other.
Yeah, yeah, that is fair.
Because I've heard mixed things from the manga's ending, which, you know,
Yeah, I don't think the ending was as bad as everyone was saying,
sure,
but also
people exaggerate.
people greatly exaggerated this ending. It's not like a Attack on Titan at all, or like a JJK.
Hmm.
It's a fine ending. It's just serviceable for a serviceable story. Like, yeah.
Mid ending for a mid story for a mid story. Hell yeah.
I didn't say that. I said
Hey,
serviceable.
that's
I
what I
was,
said.
was
Don't
much
even
more
worry. People are gonna
better.
get mad at me for your takes on My Hero Academia. Don't worry. They're gonna get mad at me for it. All right.
Let's go.
That's
Uh,
all I got to say about Black Clover, though. It's just, I mean, whatever. I'll
yeah.
keep reading it. I've started it. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna see if anything changes. Even though from you, it sounds like there hasn't. It hasn't changed.
Nope. Nope.
But
It gets worse.
maybe it's
It
like
gets much worse.
it's that one meme of the dude mining and he like turns away
Before he hits
right before
all his
Riches
diamonds.
is gonna go
Yeah,
hard at chapter 328. That's when it really starts getting going, Peter. You just had to stop right at
I
327. How could
stopped right there,
you?
and it never. I in my mind, it never gets better, and I'm gonna stick by that.
Yeah, I would guess that's how it's gonna go. Yeah.
Um, but on my end, as I continued reading comics, I ended up, coming across a YouTube video that reignited my drive to check out this one comic line that I read, back in like elementary school, and it was formative for me
Hmm.
because it was like one of the only comic books that were available in like the school library or the public library, and it was always there. That comic series is Bone. Classic,
Oh shit!
classic, classic, classic.
Yes, I
And I'm
love this.
rereading it, and it's been decades since I last read it, probably.
Decades
And
plural.
man,
You're so old.
this shit hits. It's okay. Bone is to comics what Avatar:
Jeff
The Last
Smith.
Airbender is to cartoons. Where, yes, it's labeled as for kids, but it's just a great story
Yeah.
in general. Um, as I'm rereading it now, what, like 15 years later,
Decades later.
there are actually a surprising amount of things that I'm picking up on now
Yeah.
and that I'm reading now that either had no context for me as a kid or I just did not appreciate as much. The writing is really good. The story is obviously fantastic. That's what I read it for as a kid. It's because it's super engaging and realistic. It's gritty, but it's also got a ton of hope, and the the fantasy elements are so cool. And it's not necessarily doing anything unique, but the art and the humor,
Mm-hmm.
the bones, like the bones are such fantastic characters.
Yeah,
To
it's
just
a good design.
you're throwing in essentially like a Sunday morning cartoon strip character into high fantasy Game of Thrones esque world. Not really Game of Thrones esque, but
Sure.
it's that high fantasy, and it's just the blending of the two that I think works so well. Um, I don't know when the last time you read this.
I was gonna say, yeah, because I also read these in
Yeah,
grade school. I mean, we had the same school
exactly.
library. We were probably trying to
Yep.
borrow it at the same time. I'm like, what do you mean the
I've,
third Bone story is
I
gone?
don't know
Which
how
bastard
often
borrowed
I've
this
reread.
from me? Yeah, I know.
I've reread this series so often.
Yeah, so
Like
did I. Yeah.
I have I'm rereading it now, and
Mhm.
like I have the beats memorized. Like I
Oh,
know
really?
exactly
I
everything that
definitely forgot a
happens.
shit ton of it because I own it physically, and so I could like just pick it,
Same,
take it
yeah.
off the
The big
shelf, and
ass.
look at it
Do you have the big
anytime.
ass compendium
I
that
have
is
that.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
50
Exactly.
pounds?
Just all the books in one thick
Mm,
ass thing. Yeah,
yeah.
and then some sort of separate one for some side story thing. I don't know. He's still Jeff Smith. I think he still makes some side stories about it sometimes. Maybe I'm not
hmm
really sure.
I think he did one for like
Somewhat
Briar
recently.
or Rose, whatever.
Yeah.
But man, it's so cool. It's such a unique thing, and the video I watched kind of gave me a greater uh,
Yeah.
appreciation for it. And I'll talk more about it in the YouTube
Oh,
section.
okay.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
man, I can go into it right now because I mean, what else is there to say about Bone? It's
It's
fantastic.
a
Um,
masterpiece.
but this new YouTube channel that I came across called Matt Comic and Manga History. I just saw this video. Is like, oh, they're very kind of uh, algorithm grabbing titles. It's like
The full
this one man
history.
changed the comic
Oh, sure.
industry
Yeah, yeah.
forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an attention grabbing thumbnail where it's
Yeah.
like Marvel Comics has like no sales, but this
Other
publishing
thing.
industry,
Yeah.
and it was all because of Bone. Because essentially Jeff Smith obviously published um, independent, not attached to anyone,
Mm-hmm.
which is such an interesting thing. Like this channel that I found does deep dives into comic history and manga history, and just like how things were published, what the industry was like, which is interesting because I like kind of deep diving on things that I like, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I have never really engaged with comics or manga history like that, and kind of understanding who these artists that I really love were, what the circumstances they had to go through in order to get these stories published.
Yeah.
Because Bone was like on the brink of, because it was published independently, they were damn near broke for a ton of the time that they were making it. And then
Mm-hmm.
also like people weren't always people weren't always initially purchasing the newest copies until eventually it grows, and it's just a cool story to see how popular it got, specifically with libraries and kids, and like it eventually got
Mm-hmm.
picked up by Scholastic as their publisher, and now Scholastic publishes more comics than anything else in the Western world. Like
Mm-hmm.
they are the biggest share in comics and graphic novels. It's just an interesting kind of take on the history of what I have only really appreciated from afar. But yeah,
Yeah, it's
cool
cool.
YouTube channel to check out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how many other people our age grew up on the Bone comics, or if it was just a matter of like our school library went crazy. They had the best. They had
I was
all
talking
the
with my
best hidden
roommates,
gems.
and they all know Bone. It
Yeah,
is people
it's
people
out there.
know
It's
Bone. It
popular.
was
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
cultural thing.
Yeah.
It was part of the culture.
Yeah, it's a cool one. That it's been on the back of my mind for a while to go back to. Um, yeah, I might do that soon. Who
Glad I
knows?
reread it. Yeah, highly recommend.
That's cool. Um, that's it for the books. YouTube. I only have one thing, and you just said one of your things. Do you have what else? How many other things you got in total?
Just a couple of short things to mention.
Okay. I'll do mine and then I'll let you ramble.
Okay.
So yeah, I was doing I ended up catching up with a Critical Role Campaign 3 Hell's Bells.
Oh shit.
After all this
Okay, because
time, after all
the
this time of watching
final
the
episode.
shits and from campaign 1 to 3, I'm now caught up and I'm viewing them. I've only like viewed the past week one like up to date and like the week it releases. Um, and so yeah, I guess I'll just be doing that for time in memoriam, if just forever for the rest of my life until they die. I guess
Mm-hmm.
I'll be looking at that shit. The 60-year-old Travis Willingham on his 14th character or some shit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and yeah, so I had complaints about certain fan servicey aspects of it with
Mm-hmm.
them doing multiple campaigns, them playing multiple characters within the same universe, and they sort of do something with that early on, and I'm not really a big fan of it. They do a similar thing where there's a fan service moment involving the multiple characters that they've played over their multiple campaigns in the same universe. And the thing they do with it more recently, I like way more. And there's one
Okay.
major difference from that I don't want to say, as it might spoil it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is like I think a good reason as to why I find one to be acceptable and one to be is just kind of annoying, slightly. Um, but yeah, it's just I don't know. It's nice, I guess. The overall, I mean, would I recommend Critical Role? I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah, yeah, obviously.
If you're into
We're in
the,
it for the long haul.
I know. Oh
Like
yeah, well we are. Yeah,
it's hard to recommend just
it
because it
is.
is over 1,000 hours of content, well over 1,000 hours, and that's hard to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But it is,
They're long as
it's an
shit. Each
experience
video is
unlike,
4 hours.
yeah, it's an experience unlike anything else. I am,
It's a
because
very
I'm,
unique experience. Yeah.
I think I kind of fell off watching campaign three maybe halfway through,
Yeah.
probably closer to
Which I
like
think is fair because
three quarters.
they get muddled. It feels less organized. Maybe it feels like they're just sort of just doing whatever. I don't know. The first two felt more like there was a bit clearer of a goal, and the bigger lack sort of one in a good chunk of two's runtime
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
felt more intentional because that's just sort of what the group is, sort of thing. And in three, it's like this weird thing where they sort of initially seem like two's group, but by the end of it, they're sort of doing stuff that campaign one's group was doing. If
It
that
does
makes
seem
sense.
like they were in, at least in campaign three, they were more interested in having fun. Like it seemed like they were just more so playing to have fun with the world that they've created and the characters that they have now.
Hmm.
Obviously, still engaging in, you know, really cool story arcs. I think campaign three I still enjoyed up until the point I dropped it. Um, but yeah, two was, I feel like, more specifically crafted to become like it was like a narrative
Yeah,
experience.
which isn't necessarily like why
It's
I'm
also
watching it. I'm watching it for like the
mhm,
just like the
Dungeons and Dragons. I
acting,
mean,
just
I
like
love
that.
the role playing and
Mostly
the
just the
voice
role playing
acting.
of it. I'm
Yeah,
not watching it for
yeah.
them like their strategies of D&D, like because they kind of suck at
Hmm.
it. But I'm like, or at least some of them do. Some of the guests they bring on like know the game really well. But like some of them are like yeah, or like most of the main cast members they've been playing it for like 10 years. They still don't know like what random things do. Part of that is the game D&D because it is this weird complicated thing and it's hard
Hmm.
to first of all remember everything, and then it's secondly also hard to remember the exact ruling that you've made for
Right.
certain things
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
so it's very vague and a little bit annoying, like the way that the game is built upon. But yeah, I don't think I've ever on this podcast tried to explain what like why to watch it because I mean most people know like what it is vaguely, but like if I had to define what it is to like I don't know, I guess advertise it to people. I'm not being paid for this, but if I had to like
Mm.
sell people on the idea, is I would say it's a mix of like an audiobook and a podcast, where the audiobook portion is you are
Like a narrative
seeing a
experience, right? Yeah.
narrative unfold before your eyes, but it is also a podcast where it is a group of friends getting together to talk about shit,
Having
and
fun.
the
Yeah.
stuff that
And
they're
playing a
talking
game.
about
Hmm.
is a narrative being formed in front of you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say it's like an audiobook and podcast like in one, like in a sort of a
Yeah.
weird, unique, interesting package that I think is
And then
very entertaining.
because it's also streamed, you get that live, kind of live action aspect of it, where it's
It's
almost
happening before
blend of like
yeah.
theater
Yeah,
where it's just like a lot of
improv
improvisation,
theater.
almost
Yeah,
100% improv theater.
there's some
But
stuff planned
it
behind the
is mixed with that
scenes, like
narrative. Yeah.
the cast members.
And,
I assume they'll like talk to each other. Like sometimes it's like,
hmm
hey, our character should try to do this thing, or they'll talk to the DM where it's like, I want this twist to happen, like sort of thing. But like, yeah,
It's
most
really
most
cool.
of it is improv. Like all the very specific, like what people are saying and what a lot of times they're doing, is just on the screen. Which some people theorize that it's planned out or whatever. I know one of our
Mhm.
friends is a he's very into the conspiracy of like it's all planned
Really?
out. I think so. Yeah, one of our
I
mutual
don't,
friends.
yeah,
It sort of is.
I don't think it is.
Which I understand because especially during campaign 2 and sometimes in 3, it feels like where's the script? Who wrote this shit? This goes crazy or something like that. So
Yeah,
it feels like a couple uh, too perfect moments. Like a few too many of those maybe happen consecutively on like a narrative standpoint where it's like it feels like it has to be planned out sort of thing. But I don't
yeah.
know. Like to me, it's just I read into it as this is the way it just happened about. And like all these people
I agree.
they know stories
It's
pretty well. They voice act a lot. They're
yes,
like a part of a
exactly.
lot of various different things. So like they know character arcs and they know like
Dungeons and
how plots should
Dragons.
happen. Yeah,
Matt Mercer is a world-class DM. Obviously, everyone knows that.
he's
He
been doing it for
knows
20
how
plus
to
years or whatever.
write. Oh, he knows how to write. He knows how to write a plot, and he knows how to use the framework of Dungeons and Dragons, and kind of manipulate the story into a way that is, you know, satisfying
Hmm.
and rich with narrative payoff. So it doesn't mean that it's scripted.
Yeah,
It means
it's
that
planned
there
out.
is a story that is planned out
Hmm.
with random things happening along the way.
Yeah.
But we will explore this story that he has written. Like, so yes, is it scripted? Sure. As in, any video game is scripted.
Yeah,
Like, what are we talking about
isn't he
here?
types out a big document or whatever at the start
Yeah,
or like between campaigns of like here's things I want to be doing. Hopefully
yeah.
that
Has
maybe the
things
people
planned
do.
out. It's just the experience of D&D, which is when I first heard of D&D, like, I don't know, it was like back in middle school, high
Sure,
school. I had no idea what it was.
it didn't
And
appeal to
it's
me at
very
that age.
strange until like you actually play through it or experience it in some
It
form
took multiple
where
campaigns for me to be like actually
familiar
invested
with
in
it.
it.
Yeah.
Like the first two
It's
campaigns I played, I was like I didn't give a shit, sort
it's
of
very
thing, and I like
strange.
barely knew the rules because the rules are dumb.
Hmm
But by the
It
third
is.
one and now the fourth one, uh, it's it's a good time. And
Yeah.
again, yeah, I mean, sure, it's maybe not necessarily for everybody, but I would still almost like, even if you are outside of that, I would almost maybe just sort of
Fun
recommend
experience.
the
Like you just
Critical
play
Role
with friends to
or
have
just
fun.
that,
And
yeah,
then
or actually doing
and then
it,
if you want to
yeah,
experience something where you don't have to
yeah,
get a group of friends together, then you can just watch it because it's not like streaming is out of the ordinary at this point.
hmm,
People watch streamers, and this is maybe just a more not scripted, but a more
produced,
guided experience, more produced.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Which, like, if
it's
you are
cool.
getting
I
into
like
D
it.
and D, the one like caveat of Critical Role would be
Yeah,
like, this is not
do
the
not
norm.
expect this. It
This
is
is not the
not the
norm of
norm
like
at
what
all.
people are. I did
Yeah.
also start watching the Dungeon Dudes, their first campaign. I'm just gonna go in order of those dudes now. They got the Dungeons
Whatever.
of
Yeah,
Drakkenheim, which I think all their
Drakkenheim. That's
campaigns
good.
take place in the same setting of Drakkenheim. I'm a few episodes into that, and I like that one a lot, also, but for like different reasons. Like
Yeah.
they are more into the mechanics of the actual like combat and exploration of like utilizing all of their whatever features that they have, and also still the role play is quite nice, and like it's a lot more grounded in terms of like they still have production value stuff. They have like those Dwarven Forge like whatever like
Hmm.
little things.
But it's not a multimillionaire
Yeah, exactly.
like
It's and like
industry at this
like the
point.
thing that annoys me sometimes about like especially near the end of campaign 3, like there's just a lot of really long ass fights
Mm,
where it's like
mm,
it's hard for me as a viewer to like be invested in it for that long and like to keep track of like what even has happened because some of them span
mhm.
between episodes. I think even like they just keep going,
Oh,
like
shit.
they just stop midway through a couple times, which I
I
mean
mean,
that would happen sometimes in 1 and 2, but that was like
that
maybe once or twice in each of those.
was rare.
And in this one,
Yeah.
it's happening like a couple times in a row because
Okay.
they just keep getting bigger, which I think is silly
Hmm
a little bit because like the fights especially are like almost everyone is like this is the final battle type of thing in like the
hmm
you especially feel that in campaign 3 and like that reflects in builds up upon the idea of like this is not the normal D&D experience type of thing.
Yeah, you're watching heavily produced is what it is. Critical Role specifically. But hey, Campaign 3 is coming to an end this upcoming Tuesday, final episode.
Wait, what?
And it's yeah.
Campaign 3 is ending already?
Yep.
Right as soon as they get him. I'm fine with that, whatever.
They just dropped.
I didn't even know.
Their
I
channel
didn't
update.
really think about it.
Yeah, the live stream is going to be 8 hours long.
Yeah.
So the last episode is going to be 8 hours.
God damn.
Yeah, so what you were saying about having long ass combat,
yeah, I mean,
maybe that might deal with that.
I guess that makes sense because I mean, like it felt like it's near the end, but it's also felt like that for the past like 10, 20 episodes. It felt like it's near the end, so it's like I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I guess
wrap up some.
It makes sense.
And now it finally is, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah,
I'm excited to catch a campaign from the beginning. And just like I guess weekly.
It was fun to watch
caught up
Campaign 3 at the beginning.
Yeah. I'll be able to experience that
it's a really
before
interesting
whenever they
experience.
do that.
Because the fall off is insane. Like the first episode always pulls in like close to like 5 million.
Well, yeah, and that's normal for
the,
YouTube series in general, and especially so for these longer ones. You're just gonna have a viewer drop off, but they're still making hundreds of thousands of views on like the newer shits.
No, like it's an extremely successful. Where they started and where they ended up. You've watched the whole story, and it's cool to see how big they've gotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. From like campaign 1 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's the full experience that I would recommend. Most people are like, skip the first one, just go to the second one. I am not a part skipper. I am not in favor of that. Start from the beginning.
Especially because the first part is my favorite.
It also, it's both of our favorites, despite the lowest production value. Yeah. And also, you start from the middle of it, so you don't get like the full, actually sort of realized story. But I've accepted like just being like, okay, I'm in the middle of this shit now. Slightly. It's still pretty early on into the character cycle of whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of our favorites is the first one. I would say start with that still.
Yeah. And my end of YouTube, I guess, speaking of, look how far they've come. Sardonicast.
Mm-hmm.
Their newest episode with a guest.
Oh yeah. I was once they announced that in the previous one, I'm like, oh, Peter's gonna love this. This is gonna be the collab of the year for him.
It was fantastic, and I guess he's been asked to come back. We might have not a Ralph.
Who replace Ralph?
A new member of Sardonicast.
He's American, right? They did another American on to host it.
Exactly.
So I have enjoyed Alex and Adam as dual hosts. They've done a good job without Ralph. I did like Ralph because not like drama necessarily, but like just his opinion was so much different. His opinion was so much different from Adam's, and then Alex was sort of like an in-betweener sort of thing. At least how I thought of it as like the dynamic with the three of them before, and I quite enjoyed that. And without Ralph, it's still been good, and whatever guests they have brought on is nice also. I've enjoyed just all of it in general, really.
Yeah, but I'm glad that people enjoyed Man Carrying Things. Kind of.
He was a great guest, because he was like a fan of the show, and like both of them independently, and he was like bringing up these things from like other episodes.
Movies.
Yeah.
Because
he can make a good.
I watched both his original channel and his side channel with his wife, Woman Carrying Man. Because that's where they do their
good channel.
that's where they do their movie reviews,
which
I've been checking up on. And then obviously I've been watching Man Carrying Thing for a while now. Ever since he started as like a book reviewer, and it was like deep into the Sanderson and Stephen King and a bunch of classic stuff that I really liked. And then eventually he kind of moved to this skit performance kind of video, YouTube IQ kind of things, and it's cool to see how big he's gotten. And I like Sardonicast, and I like him, and both of them.
It's a cool collab.
Music together is great. Hope they continue to. Hope it works out.
Yeah, man. I watched that episode, and I immediately thought of you, and then I also was like, at the end of it, I was like, I should check out his stuff, Man Carrying Things. I should check out his channel. I haven't done that yet. Oops.
You should.
But I might by next time we would do this. Who knows?
He's got some takes I strongly disagree with.
Sure.
But I mean, it doesn't matter because he does a good job of forming
Articulating
his
it.
opinion, yeah, and articulating it. That it's fun to watch his stuff. Yeah, his reviews with his wife are so funny because she has like more, I don't know, not a normie opinion, but more of a mainstream
Sure.
opinion of most things, where she doesn't really
She's not a
strongly love or hate a
cinephile.
lot of things. Some things she obviously does,
Hmm.
but it's funny where he's more, yeah, obviously more of a critique, and they have very very differing opinions on, on many movies, which is
Hmm.
fun to watch.
Yeah, that's nice. It's always
Yeah.
nice when like you get that uh, in a YouTube video, just like multiple
Hmm.
voices in on a thing of like varying opinions. I mean, the two of us were two different voices, but we have sort of
On most
formed
things.
somewhat similar
Hmm.
opinions about a lot of whatever mediums of stuff.
Hmm.
And to me, I like that, and I also sort of like seeing stuff where it's like, I mean, what you just said, where it's one opinion from one perspective and then a completely different one, and then
Yeah,
they,
and you get
so
to
long
kind
as
of
they
you grill
debate it
each
in a
other.
positive way, and I mean, the
Yeah,
two of
yeah,
them are married,
exactly.
so I assume it's they're cool with whatever they're
They just had a
arguing
kid,
about.
so yeah,
Oh shit!
I think they're doing
Yeah, yeah,
all right.
yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. YouTube.
Okay. Well, that takes us to the end of this godforsaken video that people have been wanting to click off for 3 hours now.
Mm.
So yeah, another one for the books, Peter. Subscribe and look out for more of these next time in another
Uh,
year, or I mean month.
mm-hmm.